YouTube channel, get into some content, do more reading books. I'm not gonna do the baseball content. Baseball season's over, so I'm gonna wait till next year to do that. Cover some baseball, maybe read some baseball books, maybe along the way. But I'm not doing any baseball history as of right now. So I'm gonna focus on this book that I purchased a long time ago on my Amazon Kindle called Blood Brothers: The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, two significant people in the 20th century. Um, they made a lot of impact, for better or for worse, but they're very influential people. And there was a book that was written about these two men, about their friendship. Very fascinating. So I want to get into that, read excerpts from this book for a while, read the whole book, hopefully. And also, I was going to do some other things that deals with the content to get my subscribers up. I appreciate the subscribers, 121 subscribers so far. So let's get started with the fatal friendship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, Blood Brothers. That's the name of the book. Let's get into it. Malcolm X and Ali were like very close brothers. It was almost as if they were in love with each other. Freddie Pacheco, Muhammad Ali's physician. What happens to a dream deferred? Langston Hughes asks in one of his most moving and insightful poems. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or does it explode? You ask the same question about the lives of two extraordinarily gifted men, both born in segregated land, and raised amidst pain and discrimination to fix a violent world. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it snake toward hopelessness, despair, drunkenness, addiction, and poverty? Or does it explode in rage? A dream deferred, Malcolm X knew, could become an American nightmare. Our story begins with two questions. Who was Cassius Clay? And how did he become Muhammad Ali? As much as been written about him, he remains enigmatic, a silent sphinx. He has meant different things to different people at different times. It has become increasingly difficult to know the Muhammad Ali of the 1960s. Since the end of the Vietnam War, liberal writers have manufactured an image of him as a hero of social causes, a unifying force of goodwill. He is no longer seen as a controversial, threatening, or anti-American. His legacy has become distorted and trivialized. In a tragic irony, Parkinson's disease has robbed him of his verbal gifts, once known as the Louisville Lip. Ali no longer boasts, rhymes, or raps. His silence has been filled with corporate sponsors. Movie producers, and writers who have created a new voice for him. A voice that neither preaches racial separation nor acknowledges his past with Malcolm X. A minister in the Nation of Islam, Malcolm espoused racially charged rhetoric about devilish white men, brainwashed Christian Negroes, and bloody revolution. Many feared that he might organize the opening battle of an impending. Robert Stonehouse, thanks for coming on. Thank you. I'm doing good. If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe and read a book about Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, Blood Brothers. Okay, if that was you, you can subscribe to the channel. This is a book that I'm going to be reading for a while. So thanks for tuning in. Yeah, thank you. Subscribe to the channel. You definitely benefit from it because I have a lot of stuff I'm going to be doing. Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay. Might organize the opening battle of an impending race war. Muhammad Ali called this man his brother, leading critics to vilify him as a disgrace to boxing. At first, Cassius Clay, as he was known until 1964, hid his relationship with Malcolm, a master of deception. Books, I don't know what we're talking about. The book is Blood Brothers: The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. That's what I'm reading right now. At first, Cassius Clay, as he was known until 1964, his relationship with Malcolm, a master of deception, proved infuriatingly elusive for journalists. Figuring out who or what is the real Cassius Clay is a parlor game that has become unrewarding, even for experts, commented Jack Olson, a white writer who gained unprecedented access to the fighter. Now, this is not about reading a book about Blood Brothers, the fatal friendship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. I do read, do Bible studies. I did one earlier this morning. I read from Ezra and I read from the book of Nehemiah, so you can check that out. Did not Ali date with his wife? I don't know what you mean by that, but just gonna keep moving. Clay's personality is like a jigsaw puzzle whose pieces were cut by a drunken comforter. A jumbled collection of moves and attitudes that do not seem to interlock. Sometimes he sounds like a religious fanatic. His voice sings song and chanting, and that all at once. He will turn into a calm, reasoning, and confused student of the scriptures. He is a loudmouth windbag, and at the same time a remarkably sincere and dedicated athlete. Oh, good, bro. I love channels that just read, just so calming, powerful. Thank you, brother. Yeah, thank you, Berksy Chills. Subscribe to the channel if you like this channel. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of reading with my channel. You just look at my description of my channel. It's gonna deal with a lot of book reading, a lot of historical context. Hi, what you on about? I'm reading a book about Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay. Excuse me, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, Blood Brothers, the fatal friendship. Thank you, Burke C. Chills. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you. Appreciate it. Tell a friend, share it, share the channel with whomever you know. Get the subscription up if you like reading, book reading, other content that I'm going to be doing. Stay tuned. He can be a kindly benefactor of the neighborhood. Okay, thank you, Logan 904. Thanks for subbing. Thank you. Appreciate it. He can be a kindly benefactor of the neighborhood, children, a vicious bully in the ring, a prissy Puritan, totally intolerant of drinkers and smokers, and a teller of dirty jokes. In 1966, when Olsen began writing Black is Best, a lengthy profile of the boxer piecing together the jigsaw puzzle of Muhammad Ali seemed impossible. Yet what Olsen and other writers have failed to recognize that the real Muhammad Ali can only be seen when his many masks are uncovered. Because from 1960 to 1965, the half decade that framed his relationship with Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali had a relationship with his friend's wife. Is it mentioned in the book? I'm quite sure it is. I read this book before, but I'm just reading to you, the listeners. So I'm gonna go take you on the journey through the book. I'm quite sure that's the case. Like I said, I bought this book before in the past, so I haven't read it in a long time. So it's a book that I have in my Amazon Kindle. So I'm reading it again to you, the listeners. So check it out. So stay tuned. From 1960 to 1965, the half decade that framed his relationship with Malcolm X, he appeared convincingly as four different personalities that was packaged and expressed at different times for different audiences. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Logan94. Thank you. He first emerged on the world stage as Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. for the 1960 Rome Olympics. Wide-eyed, talkative, enthusiastic, likable, a defender of the glacial progress being made in American race relations. In Rome, Cassius proudly told a Soviet reporter who asked him about the American color line, "We got qualified people working on that problem. I'm not worried about the outcome. To me, the USA is still the best country in the world, counting yours." As Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr., he was the quiet Southern Negro, downplaying racial conflict and avoiding controversy. After turning professional toward the end of 1960, he became the Louisville Lit, boasting loudly, spouting poetry, belittling opponents, and advertising himself. As Louisville Lit, he became the booming, athletic equivalent of Louis Richard and Elvis Presley, echoing the raucous notes of rock and roll and the television antics of professional wrestler Gorgeous George. As the civil rights movement escalated from 1962 to early 1964, he evolved into Cassius X, the loyal follower of Elijah Muhammad, the Supreme Minister of the Nation of Islam. Appreciate Logan Note 904. Thanks for liking the channel. Thank you. Liking the video right now. Thank you. Share it, tell a friend, share it, whatever way make it sound. Okay, as the civil rights movement escalated from 1962 to early 1964, he evolved into Cassius X, the loyal follower of Elijah Muhammad, the Supreme Minister of the Nation of Islam. As Cassius X, a name he adopted only for a brief time, he imitated Malcolm, appearing angry and outraged by racial injustice. Behind the walls of the nation's mosque, he stood up as an outspoken defender of the black Muslim philosophy, one that promoted racial pride. can't because I don't have a SIM card. You don't need a SIM card to subscribe. I don't know if you mean if you can't share it. That's okay. You can't subscribe if you want. Behind the walls of the nations of Mars, he stood up as an outspoken defender of the black Muslim philosophy. Yeah, okay, no problem. Okay, you can't share. That's okay. We can tell those who you know about my channel and see if they like the channel. Appreciate the clarification. Logan 904. Thank you. Right, as I continue on, behind the walls of the nation's mosque, he stood up as an outspoken defender of the black Muslim philosophy, one that promoted racial pride, self-determination, and complete separation of the races. As an acolyte of Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, he defiantly opposed Martin Luther King's approach to the civil rights movement, the ideals of racial integration. Finally, after winning the heavyweight title in February 1964, he became Muhammad Ali, renamed by Elijah, prior apart from Malcolm, the new front man for the Nation of Islam. As in his other personas, he inhabited the role of Muhammad Ali, often wearing the somber, stone-faced mask of Elijah's paramilitary followers. As Muhammad Ali, he instantly became the most politically controversial. How many people I checked? I don't know what you mean by that. Logan 904, but I can't count. I know it's one person is watching and 5 people have liked. That's all I can say about that. As Muhammad Ali, he instantly became the most politically controversial athlete in the country's history. Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr., the Louisville Lit, Cassius X, Muhammad Ali. The boxer played all these roles wearing a different mask as the occasion dictated. He was all of these characters, and sometimes more than one at the same moment. I don't have to be what you want me to be. He once announced, I'm free to be who I want. Yet some of the men closest to, oh, that's me watching. Yeah, yes. Okay, thanks for watching. Somebody up, 2 people are watching, and 5 people have liked this video so far. So that's you, Logan. Thanks for watching. Yet some of the men close to him had trouble understanding exactly who he was free to be. They say there's 15 sides to Clay, his ring physician, Ferdy Pacheco. Yeah, 2 people are watching right now, and 5 liked the video so far. No, it's 5 likes. I see 5 likes. I guess you see that on your end, 6 likes. Well, I see 5 likes. Freddie Pacheco. To me, he's just a thoroughly confused person. Sure, he has sides, but they don't mesh. Only by examining Cassius Clay's early years in Louisville and his relationship with Malcolm X can one hope to discover Muhammad Ali. Central to his life, relationships, and career was deception, disguised as the slimmest, of course. Now I see 6 likes. Has been integral to African American culture since the first moments of contact between blacks and whites. From the stories of, I see 6 likes, that makes no sense. Yeah, it's 6 likes. Well, again, I came in and nobody liked the video, but like I said, I appreciate the support. But Rabbit's trickery and direction to such novels as Richard Wright's Native Son and Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, the ability of black Americans to wear disguises. I see 6. Like I said, I can't control who likes it. It don't matter. Whoever likes it, I appreciate it, but I just see 6 likes right now. The ability of black Americans to wear disguises and assume multiple identities has been crucial in navigating the boundaries and pathways of the color line in America. But beyond African American culture, the volatile circumstances of young Cassius Clay home life created an atmosphere conducive to disguise. That he entered a profession that rewarded violence and deception, a trade that trafficked in feints, fakes, and pain, indicates how ingrained those qualities were in his life. If Olson, Pacheco, and others could not figure out the riddle of Cassius Clay, that attested to how well he had learned to hide himself. Like Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X was also a man of many masks. The seventh son of an itinerant Baptist preacher, Malcolm Little, inherited his father's rage against white supremacy as a young man in the 1940s. He came of age as Detroit Red, a street hustler strutting in a zoot suit, peddling drugs and prostitutes in the smoky pool halls and jazz clubs of Boston and New York. He developed the swagger of a trickster, cultivating the cool pose of the hip cats he admired. Behind the mask of Detroit Red, he buried the pain of his past. In prison for larceny, his fellow convicts called him Satan. voraciously reading history, sociology, and theology, he transformed himself into a puritanical follower of Elijah Muhammad, the self-proclaimed messenger of Allah. From his cell, he absorbed and memorized Muhammad's writings and speeches, accepting his message of separatism and strict morality. By the 1950s, the mid-1950s, the former convict had become the messenger's protege, Malcolm X, an outspoken minister, saving lost souls in bars, nightclubs, and back alleys. As Malcolm X, he was a model of redemption, preaching the doctrine of abstinence from drugs, alcohol, and crime. The angriest black man in America divided the country with his sharp tongue and brutal honesty, openly condemning whites for terrorizing black Americans. You play Roblox. No, I don't play video games. Logan 904, I don't play video games. Ultimately, the internal politics of the Nation of Islam and his own crisis of faith led him on a journey toward the universalism of Sunni Islam. In Africa and the Middle East, he was known as El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, but he would forever be remembered in America as Malcolm X. Malcolm may have changed his name, but at his core, he remained the same dedicated freedom fighter, fiercely uncompromising. He carried himself with imperial restraint, striking a cool posture that could intimidate the most self-assured white men. For Malcolm, coolness meant speaking his mind. If he was to submit to white authority, being cool meant being completely free. In many ways, Malcolm X and Cassius Clay seemed the product of the same DNA. Both thrived on center stage, surrounded by an audience, standing beneath the spotlight at Malcolm's pulpit or in Clay's ring. They responded to the thundering sound of applause and the deafening chorus of boos. Neither man could resist a platform, an interview, or a debate. Both enjoyed sparring with words and manipulating other men's fears with sensational language. They were both fighters. Before Cassius X became Muhammad Ali, Malcolm saw something in the young boxer that no one else did. Not many people know the quality of the mind he's got in there, he told writer George Plimpton in 1964. Like Malcolm, he was absolutely self-assured, proud, and defiant. He carried himself with boundless confidence, boldly professed his own greatness with the way that Malcolm fiercely denounced white America. Studying Clay's interactions with reporters, the way he spellbound audiences. Guys, why I'm liking on trying to listen. Again, I can't control who likes it or not. As long as you supported the content, truly appreciate it. The way he spellbound audiences with his performances, Malcolm realized that he could become something more than an athlete. As the heavyweight champion of the world, Clay possessed the kind of far-reaching cultural power that could unify black people. Recognizing Clay's global fame, Malcolm exploited him. He watched me for 1 year. Thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't know that, but thank you. Malcolm realized that he could become something more like an athlete, more than an athlete. As a heavyweight champion of the world, Clay possessed the kind of far-reaching cultural power that could unify black people. Recognizing Clay's global fame, Malcolm exploited him, envisioning a new movement that fused together Clay's world and his into one built around celebrity and politics. A myth has enshrouded the encounters between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. The stories are told and retold, fashioned in ways that obscure the reality. And a quote here, a quote there. Before you know it, a fabricated truth has emerged. Drawing on a few unsubstantiated observations by writer Alex Haley and a couple of self-serving comments by Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, historians and biographers have manufactured a convenient morality play involving two men who came together, formed a deep relationship, and then suddenly dramatically broke apart. End of story. It was almost as if the two larger-than-life figures were planets, swinging close to each other in their orbits, and then moving apart on separate paths. It was never that simple, although their respective biographers have neglected to show that Ali and Malcolm were much more important to one another than previously acknowledged. We have uncovered and interpreted previously unexamined documents that reveal the personal and political dynamics between them. The complex friendship between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali is interred in a labyrinthine jungle of sources, the private papers of Malcolm X, Alex Haley, and others, FBI files, and surveillance reports. State Department records, archive news footage and television programs, long unexamined interview transcripts, new interviews with people who knew Ali and Malcolm intimately, the daily press, and a variety of other published and unpublished materials. Thank you, Logan. Thank you. Investigating the relationship, we have reconstructed the lives and movements of Ali and Malcolm, focusing especially on the period from the time they met in June of 1962 through February of 1965. Plotting their daily activities provided a key to deciphering reacted FBI files, revealing the events and conversations recorded in the borough's records in a new light. Using these unique sources, we tracked their movements and in the process discovered how historians and biographers have misread the complicated relationship between them. In the generally accepted narrative, writers maintain that Ali severed his friendship with Malcolm the moment Elijah renamed him. These authors have relied on a quote that Ali allegedly gave Alex Haley during an interview in Harlem, one that Haley excluded from the published account in Playboy. In fact, nowhere in the Playboy interview is there any mention of Malcolm or why Ali turned his back on him in allegiance to Elijah Muhammad. In the epilogue of the autobiography of Malcolm X, however, published 7 months after Malcolm's death, Haley recounted his memory of the interview with Ali. According to Haley, Ali said, You just don't buck Mr. Muhammad and get away with it. I don't want to talk about Malcolm no more." It is likely that during his research for the epilogue, Haley read a nearly identical quote Ali gave Ebony magazine in September 1964 when he said, "You just don't buck Mr. Muhammad and get away with it." Using Haley's quote, several accomplished biographers and historians have mistakenly suggested that Ali made this statement to Haley during the week after Elijah Muhammad renamed him on March 6, 1964. But Ali was not in Harlem at that time. More importantly, Haley conducted the interview after the boxer returned from Africa on June 24, 1964. Accepting this chronology of events, writers have simplified the complex feelings Ali had for Malcolm. Yet in Haley's unpublished notes from Playboy interview, he scribbled on an index card a comment from Ali that revealed the champ's hidden feelings, contradicting the epilogue in the autobiography of Malcolm X. Haley's index card indicated that Ali told him that although he followed Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm was still my brother and my friend. According to Haley, shortly after the interview, he mentioned his meeting with Ali to Malcolm. Curious, Malcolm asked what the champ had said about him. Haley wrote that he pulled out the index card with Ali's comments about Malcolm handed to the minister. After leading readers to believe that Ali had only crosswords for Malcolm, Haley wrote in the autobiography, Malcolm X stared at the card. Then out of the window, he got up and walked around. It was one of the few times I ever heard his voice betray his hurt. Sadly, Malcolm said, I felt like a blood big brother to him. Taking a deep breath, he added, I'm not against him now. He's a fine young man, smart. He's just let himself be led astray. Using great financial stress to make the autobiography of Malcolm X a publishing success, it appears that Haley manipulated Malcolm's broken relationship with Ali in order to present a more sensational historical account. Throughout the epilogue, Haley selected and excluded. How many subs do I have? I have 121. I haven't checked to see. Before I got on this live feed, I had 121. I don't know how many I have right now. I haven't checked yet. But I did have 121 subscribers. Throughout the epilogue, Haley selected and excluded events that fit into his agenda. In some cases, he tampered with the facts, but the truth was more complex than Haley let on. Only by carefully following the day-by-day activities of Ali and Malcolm can one see how intertwined their lives became and how their brotherhood unraveled, leading exorbitantly to Malcolm's assassination at the Audubon Ballroom. We have tried to rescue a story that has fallen into the hands of hagiographers. Blood Brothers explores the importance of two of the most important black men of the 1960s. Following their lives, there's the discovery that Cassius Clay had begun attending meetings or organized by the Nation of Islam well before any reporter caught wind of it. Even before he became a professional boxer, Clay became infatuated with the teachings of Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm. What follows is the story of how Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali, the central role Malcolm X played in his life. It's a tale of friendship and brotherhood, love and deep affection, but it's also a story of deceit, betrayal, violence, inside and outside the ring, during a troubled time. When Malcolm's life was in danger, when Elijah Muhammad threatened to cast him outside the Nation of Islam, Clay became the central figure in his world. For the first time, Brother Brothers reveals the instant Malcolm realized he might be murdered. He tethered his future, his very survival, to the life of a boxer who most people figured would never win the heavyweight championship. Malcolm had no doubt that someone inside the nation wanted him dead. He also knew that none of Elijah's disciples would risk Clay's life as long as they were together. Malcolm figured he was safe. Cassius was the perfect shield. Only 10 days after they celebrated the boxers' championship victory over Sonny Liston, Cassius stopped taking Malcolm X's phone calls, submitted to Elijah. The champ accepted the new name, the Supreme Minister's edict that all Muslims cease contact with Malcolm. Once Muhammad Ali sided with Elijah, Malcolm knew that he could no longer hide behind him. At that moment, he recognized that losing Ali's cover might cost him his life. All Ali understood was the violent world Malcolm inhabited. Boxing reflected a violent sport, a violent society. Violence and hate, that was explained by former heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson, were part of the prize fighters' world, Clay's world and mine. Boxing promoters paid prize fighters to get in the ring and act out other people's hates. Only in that ring of hate could a black man assault a white man with impunity. Like many young black men born to segregation and contained by white supremacy and threat of mob violence. Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Logan on 4. Thank you for joining. Like many young black men born to segregation and contained by white supremacy and the threat of mob violence, Ali channeled his fears and frustrations to the ring. In boxing gyms, he released his anger, sweating out his bow against the system of racial oppression, pummeling men who stood between him and his dreams. Ali fought not only because boxing offered him a way to make a name for himself, but also because the gym offered a sanctuary from the dangers lurking outside. The gym became the one place where he could unleash his frustration on speed bags, heavy bags, and sparring partners. At a time when black men yearned for power, he confronted the dangers of a violent world by retaliating with violence himself. What white America demands in her black champions, Black Panther Eldridge Cleaver insisted, is a brilliant, powerful body and a dull, bestial mind. A tiger in the ring, a pussycat outside the ring. Black boxers' lives were sharply circumscribed by the ropes around the ring. But Ali completely rejected the worn-out role by redefining the political boundaries of sports. He ushered in the beginning of a new era, the revolt of the black athlete. The seeds of the revolt were planted in the cities that transformed Cassius Clay into Muhammad Ali. Between 1960 and 1965, he traveled widely fighting in Rome and London, New York, and Los Angeles. When he left Louisville as a teenager, he entered a new world, one that exposed him to the possibilities of freedom beyond the American South. Yet the world beyond Louisville also taught him that no matter how famous he became, some white people would hate him just because he was black, because he was a Muslim. In gyms and mosques across the country, he matured into a man influenced by the discontent in black America. In Chicago and Detroit, Miami, and New York, he heard frustrated black men denounce the crimes of white men. Listening to Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X led him to change more than his name. When he won the heavyweight championship in February 1964, he broke free from the political constraints of the sports world, declaring that he would define himself on his own terms. When he proudly proclaimed, "I'm free to be who I am. I'm free to be who I want," he became a source of inspiration for others, who would later challenge the sports establishment. In 1969, about a year after the sociologist Harry Edwards organized black athletes in the Olympic boycott movement, he observed that Ali had been the central hero in a political revelation in sports. Ali, he proclaimed, was the warrior saint in the revolt of the black athlete in America. That revolt began the moment young Cassius Clay had his first talk with Malcolm. Once Clay met Malcolm, once the personal, good morning, you must be from a different country. Mercer Sarfrath said, "Good morning, brother." Yeah, good morning. I mean, I'm on the East Coast, so you must be somewhere in a foreign country. The relationship between Cassius Clay and Malcolm X signaled a new direction in American culture, one shaped by the forces of sports, entertainment, race, and politics. When Clay befriended Malcolm and adopted his ideology, he became the most visible, politically conscious athlete in America. More than anyone else, Malcolm molded Cassius Clay into Muhammad Ali. Okay, you're from India. All right, good. Hello, uh, Mirza from India. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate that. No, Logan, 904. No, I've been doing a lot of live streams for a while now. I've been doing a lot of live streams. This is not my first. If you go on my channel, you see a lot of live streams that I've done recently. So this is not my first one. Under Malcolm's tutelage, he embraced the world stage, emerging as an international symbol of black pride and black independence. Without Malcolm, Muhammad Ali would have never become the king of the world. It's the prologue behind the veil. He never lifted the veil, not when he was Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. or after he became Muhammad Ali. No, I'm not reading the Bible. I'm reading a book about Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, about their friendship. It's called Blood Brothers. I'm reading excerpts from that book right now. He never lifted the veil, not when he was Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. or after he became Muhammad Ali. Some things he would talk about incessantly: his greatness, his beauty, his rendezvous with destiny. Other matters he would discuss in more serious moods: history of the black man in America, black Muslim theology, after he became an unorthodox Muslim, universal peace. Yet he seldom whispered a word about discord in his own family. There was a lot of trouble, bad trouble between his father and his mother. We call one of the box's early advisors, but Cassius would bite his tongue before he mentioned it. It was a dime a dozen domestic battery out in the colored district of Louisville's West End. On a hot night of August 8th, 1967, Officer Carflesh took the call. When he arrived at 3302 Grand Avenue, an older man took off running, darting between houses into the night. Two young boys huddled close to their crying mother, whispering to her in a comforting manner. One of the youths was bleeding from a knife wound. Years later, Carflesh couldn't remember if the boy had been cut on his thigh. Finally getting some people here. All right, thank you, Logan 904. Appreciate it. But it was in the meat, bleeding pretty good. When asked about the gas, the teenager said that he had cut it on a milk bottle. It was an unlikely story. The father had bolted when he saw the police car. The mother and the policeman later told the reporter what's causing trouble. You know how women are. Fleisch got the picture. The father got drunk, began to be his wife. Her son tried to protect her and got cut for his efforts. It was not the first time that Mrs. Odessa Clay had called the police, nor was it his last. Nor was it the last. The injured son, only 15 years old, identified himself. My name is Cassius Clay. I'm a boxer under Joe Martin. The name Cassius Clay meant nothing to Carl Fleisch, but he knew Joe Martin, a patrolman who in spare time trained young boxers at Columbia Gym. Martin produced a local television program called Tomorrow's Champions. Now, many of the kids who fought each other on the weekly telecast ever won titles, but the mere fact that they were seen on TV granted them a certain local celebrity. Appreciate Logan 904 for the book. Nice book, compliment. Yeah, it's a good book, man. When you talk about Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, they're two of the people, the same people. Thank you. Hi, Sandra Clark. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, when you talk about Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, there are two of the most important men in the 20th century. When you talk about 20th century figures, historically in the 20th century, you got to put Muhammad Ali up there. You got to put Malcolm X up there. As black men, they were very, very significant in America in the 20th century. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing about this book that's fascinating. But the best yet to come. I'm just getting started. Cassius was one of a kid from the tough sides. Can I ask you a question, Messi or Ronaldo? I don't watch soccer, so I can't answer that question about Messi and Ronaldo. I'm not a soccer watcher. I don't watch soccer that much. Right, so let's skip this. See, Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr., he grew up living in fear of his father's raised fist, the smell of alcohol in his breath, and his rising angry voice bursting through the front door. All right, hello, Austin Gas. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for Sandra Clark for tuning in. Austin Gas, thank you. Appreciate it. The man exhorted his boys, don't leave our neighborhood, don't go into white people's stores, don't contradict a white man, don't look at white women, don't disobey policemen, and most importantly, don't get arrested. Our parents taught us to be safe. I'm reading a book about blood brothers, the fatal friendship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. That's the book I'm reading right now. Our parents taught us to be safe. Bob Coleman was childhood friend of Cassius Clay. They knew that if I got arrested by a policeman, there was nothing they could do to help me. It would be like I was lost to them. I would be on my own. That scared them as much as me. Cassius Clay Sr. told parables that taught young Cassius and his brother Rudy about the world. All the stories had the same general theme. Black men die after seemingly harmless encounters with white men. The murders Clay Sr. insisted were legal lynchings. They happen all the time. When I was a boy, it seemed like every day, blank day, you read in the paper about something like that. A lynching, a burning of a Negro. Every day. Now, wouldn't that turn you against the white man? 9 or 10 or 12 or 15 cases like that a week. The past haunted Clay Sr., and it lived on in the stories he told his sons, living in a world of intolerable racism and violence. Clay Sr.'s frustration manifested in outrage and loathing for the white man. As James Baldwin wrote in 1962, the Negro's past was one of rope, fire, torture, castration, infanticide, rape, death, humiliation, fear by day and night, fear as deep as the marrow of the bone, doubt that he was worthy of life, since everyone around him denied it, sorrow for his women, for his kinfolk, for his children who needed his protection and whom he could not protect. In the words of Baldwin, this hatred for white men ran so deep that it often turned against him and his own. It made all love, all trust, all joy impossible. Clay Sr. threw his entire body into the stories he told, twisting, snorting, huffing, punctuating key points with a loud or an inopportune laugh. A natural storyteller, he moved gracefully. I'm really tired, but I want to listen. That's okay, Logan 904. You can come back later and watch the live stream once I'm finished. Definitely can. You don't have to be on. If you're feeling tired, it's okay. You can come back another time and watch it. He was an exasperated artist who earned a living as a sign painter, a wiry, dark-skinned man, opinionated, outspoken. He was not much of a fire set when he was drunk. Then he was apt to turn on his family. But he was also the teller of tales, most of which centered on his fantasy life. Given his mood at the moment, he might claim to be a Mexican, or a Hindu, or Arab. During his Mexican phase, he wore a serac and took siestas. Okay, Logan. Okay. During his Arab period, he called his second son, Rudolph Valentino, after the actor who portrayed the Hollywood Sheik. A friend recalled that during Clay's senior time as an Arab, he observed certain rituals. All right, goodbye. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, Logan 904. Thank you. At noon, he used to get down off his painting ladder in his little box. He had a carpet. He put the carpet down, bowed to the east, then bowed to the west. All his life, Clay Sr. struggled. A friend of the family said he enjoyed life, by which he meant he took his pleasures where he found them and didn't worry excessively about propriety and consequences. But a streak of anger and a sense of opportunities denied ran like a river through his life. Had he been white, he thought he would have been famous and wealthy. His murals on walls and churches in the West End of Louisville attest to his talents. He could sing any song in his thin baritone. Yes, sir, he said. He could have been a great artist or a recording star, like the other greats. All he needed was a little more training. Nat King Cole was nothing when he started out, he said. And Dean Martin was nothing. Frank Sinatra was sickening. Cassius Clay Jr. was a mama's boy. Handsome, sweet, and well-liked. He feared his father, avoided violence, and abhorred alcohol. But in fundamental ways, he was his father's son. And he would become more so as his years passed. His father's stories made all too much sense of the violent world inside and outside his home. Two events were enough to confirm all of his father's gruesome tales of horror. Okay, Logan 94, thank you. The first happened within a 4 and 5 minute drive of Clay's home on Grand Avenue. In 1954, Andrew Wade IV, an African-American electrician, and his wife Charlotte arranged for a white couple to purchase a house for them in an all-white suburban neighborhood. The new neighbors immediately angrily reacted, insisted that the Wades sell their house and move. When Wades refused, they received ominous threats, followed by a cross burning on their lawn. Later, someone fired a rifle by a cross burning on their lawn. Later, someone fired a rifle through a window in their house. Still, the Wades stayed put. Finally, on the night of June 27, 1954, while the Wades were gone for the evening, someone dominated the house. There was no justice in the case. The person who denied the bomb was never identified. The Wades were forced to move into the segregated West End. It was another example of what Clay Sr. told his son. The white man doesn't want you around. He explained that in America, the black man could never get ahead. Cassius asked why. If he worked hard, why couldn't he become a rich man? Why couldn't he share in the American's dream? His father pointed to the skin on Cassius' arm. Look there, that's why you can't be rich. Second event, and for Cassius the more emotionally searing, occurred the following summer. Emmett Till's mother had packed him off to visit family members in Money, Mississippi. And not long after his arrival in the small town, he and his cousin and several local boys, whoever those three people are, like and subscribe, share this video with friends. All right, thank you for saying that, Logan 904. Thank you. He and his cousin, several local boys, went to Bryant's grocery and meat markets to buy some candy. While in the store, Till whistled while speaking to Carolyn Bryant. It may have been a wolf whistle, as some recall, or perhaps due to his problem pronouncing B words, he whistled before asking for bubblegum. Regardless, Bryant later told her husband that Till had made a pass on her. Enraged, just to warn you, I'm doing some hearts. What does that mean, some hearts? I know what you mean by that. Is that some emojis? Enraged, Roy Bryant and his half-brother J. W. Millam went after Till. They pulled him from his uncle's home, pistol whipped him, beat him, finally shot him in the head. Then they attached a heavy cotton gin fan to his neck with barbed wire and dumped him into the Tallahatchie River. In a sensational 5-day trial held in a packed courthouse attended by nationally prominent reporters, Bryant and Millam were tried for kidnapping and murder. After listening to all the evidence, the all-white jury deliberated for 67 minutes before voting to acquit the two men. If he hadn't stopped to drink a pop, commented the jury, wouldn't have taken that long. The trial, along with Till's shocking open casket funeral in Chicago, energized the civil rights movement and stood as a stark confirmation of what black males had long been taught. Justice was not colorblind. That lesson was not lost on young Cassius Clay. So that means that it will get more people in line. All right, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your support, man. Logan 904, I appreciate it. Helping me out with the channel. I appreciate that. Thank you. 20 years after the event, he recalled looking at the pictures of Till's mutilated face in the pages of Jet magazine, horrified by the sight of his eyes bulging out of their sockets and his mouth twisted and broken. He would never forget those images or the grisly stories his father told him about the crime. Mississippi justice was not confined to the South. Malcolm Little felt trapped by the same realities that pained Lyndon Jackson. Frustrated Clay Sr., frightened Clay Jr., killed Emmett Till. Writers often asked Malcolm when he first experienced racial inequality, as if he were a test subject whose anger could easily be reduced to some isolated incident. In March of 1964, shortly after Clay won the heavyweight championship, a Swedish television reporter inquired about the psychological scars that Malcolm carried from his youth. When did segregation first hurt him? Irritated, he quipped, "When I was born in a segregated hospital of a segregated mother and father." Intrigued by his provocative answer, the writer pressed further. The first was when we were living in Lansing, Michigan. I want you to get 5 million subscribers. Oh yeah, that would be great, Logan 904. Appreciate it. I appreciate your support, man. That would be wonderful. Thank you. The first was when we were living in Lansing, Michigan, in an integrated neighborhood. One evening when Malcolm was only 6 years old, he woke up and found the house on fire. The good Christians of the neighborhood had come out and set the house afire. The second was when my father was found under a streetcar where he had been thrown by the good Christians. That's my second. Grinning derisively, he posed, looking directly into the television camera. "You want my third and fourth and fifth and sixth, seventh." He never knew for sure how his father ended up under the streetcar. The coroner ruled Earl Little Sr. death accidental, but growing up fatherless, all but certain that white supremacists had killed his dad. Malcolm was embittered from an early age. He often told white journalists, "Your father isn't here to pay his debts. My father isn't here to collect, but I'm here to collect. You're here to pay." Burdened by the father's broken dreams and shattered lives, Malcolm Little and Cassius Clay transferred the deep pain and anger that they felt into an unshakable pride. Tormented by the past, they resisted From now on, I'll be in some lives, but not all. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for support, Logan Note 904. Thank you. Tormented by the past, they resisted the brutality of America, relentlessly pursuing redemption. One man was scarred by his father's absence, the other by his father's presence. They shared the kind of anguish and the love that only a brother could understand. Right, chapter 1, the mothership in Miami. As a kid in Louisville, the city seemed so big to me. New York seemed so big. Chicago seemed big. London, England seemed far away. Africa was far away. I was Cassius Clay. Then I was a Negro. I ate pork. I had no confidence. I thought white people were superior. I was a Christian Baptist named Cassius Clay. Quote Muhammad Ali. Milton Gross, New York Post said, Clay is a product of our times. The minute he got back from Rome, the saga started. 304 mostly flat cornfield miles after it departed Chicago's Union Station, the South Wind passenger train rolled into Louisville Union Station. There on December 17, 1960, a young man stepped aboard, toting a warm suitcase and a pocket full of dreams. It was Cassius Clay. Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. was 18, tall and slender, with a handsome, unmarked face. His body was deceptively lithe like a dancer, but he was a professional prize fighter. His electric smile could light up an arena, though he was haunted by fears real and imagined. He had won a gold medal in the Rome Olympics. Do you have a brother or a sister? No, I don't have no sisters. I have one brother. Just one brother. He had won a gold medal in the Rome Olympics, charmed the press corps and fellow athletes in the Eternal City, and signed a lucrative promotional contract with a collection of white Kentucky movers and shakers, known as the Louisville Sponsoring Group, LSG. And it was that group, most of them were millionaires that had paid for his train ticket. After a brief stop in Louisville, the south wind chugged over the rolling hills of Kentucky, though through a narrow and river vein section of Tennessee, then across the border into Alabama. Looking out the window as evening turned into night, Cassius saw mile after mile of the Cotton South as the train made its way through the heart of the old Confederacy, stopping to pick up more passengers in Decatur, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Dothan. There had never been a heavyweight boxer like Cassius Clay. He had the fresh, unmarked face of a teenage matinee idol, a smile to match. In his vision, often dominated by ponderous sluggers, his jitterbug style ushered in a new age for the sport. It was those sections of Dixie, those cities ruled by King Cotton, where the civil rights struggle would soon turn bitterly violent. There many white Southerners stood armed and ready to defend their way of life, certain in their conviction of black inferiority, while in Italy, however, Cassius had felt a freedom that he had never experienced growing up in the segregated west end of Louisville. As a member of the United States Olympic team, he had witnessed black excellence. Reverend Johnson had carried the American flag in the opening ceremonies, then won the prestigious decathlon. Meanwhile, Oscar Robertson had led the basketball team to the gold medal. And the incomparable Woodman Rudolph, who ran as gracefully as water being poured out of a pitcher, fired the imaginations of people around the globe. Together, Rafer, Oscar, Wilma, and Cassius reigned in Rome like ebony gods. If there was royalty at the Olympics, they were it. After Alabama, the south wind passed through the southwest corner of Georgia, entered Florida, stopping briefly in Jacksonville in the early morning before continuing its crisscrossing route through the state, stopping more often now to drop off tourists at such resort towns as Orlando, Tampa, St. Petersburg, West Palm Beach, Delray Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Hollywood before reaching its destination of Miami. There, roughly 24 hours after boarding the train, Cassius got off. It had been a long trip, but to his way of thinking, riding the train was infinitely preferable to flying and had been giving him some time to plan and dream. He was in the deep south, a place where white residents still generally regarded Jim Crow as the accepted code of life and believed that a Negro should know his place. Even so, Cassius Clay had glimpsed an alternative reality. He knew with every fiber of his being that he was destined to leave his mark on the world. I am a man of destiny, he had said less than a year before. I'm going to win the heavyweight championship of the world, earn $1 million and get me a chauffeur-driven tomato red Cadillac with a built-in hi-fi television and telephones. And that was only for starters. There will be more, later he admitted. I guess some sort of divine power must have been with me. He had come to Miami to learn a trade that would make him rich. What he did not anticipate was that a divine message would set him on the path to becoming Muhammad Ali. Waiting patiently for the boxer was trainer Angelo Dundee, his name an alias that mixed the hills of Calabria with the grime of Scotland, said more about his profession than his personality. His real name was Angelo Moreno, but Dundee was such a popular name in prize fighting that his older brother Chris adopted it. When he entered the profession, soon Angelo followed Chris and took the same name. After World War II, Chris began to promote fights in New York City, and Angelo apprenticed as a trainer. In 1951, when the boxing business became sluggish in New York, Angelo followed Chris to Miami, where the older brother had established a promotional arrangement with the recently built Miami Beach Auditorium. By the mid-1950s, Angelo had been around boxing for a decade, had learned the craft of training boxers. From the tobacco crusted floor up, his was a hands-on education, learning by talking to and watching the very best trainers in the sport. By the end of 1960, just short of his 40th birthday, he had carved out a place for himself in the fight game. He had trained welterweight, middleweight champion Carmen Basilio, as well as a stable of fighters who would soon win other titles. Short and round faced with bulging dark eyes, floppy ears, and thinning black hair, Dundee liked his pants high-waisted, his trainer's bag well-ordered, and his life as peaceful as his chaotic profession allowed. Like that of many men in his world, his personality did not seem to fit the boxing profession. Fiercely loyal to his fighters and capable of all sorts of chicanery in the pursuit of victory, he was in all other ways a gentle, gracious man who sought nothing more than tranquility. He rarely chatted with strangers, he was open and friendly with sports writers, and he did his best to please everyone. The motto of discretion, he refused to get involved in marital scraps, religious controversies, or political differences. Over the years, he had learned to smile, listen, and mind his own business. Keeping his mouth shut around cashes, Angelo learned was easy. No sooner had Clay stepped off the south wind, then he began singing his own praises. People say Cassius Clay fights like Sugar Ray, he told Angelo, as well as anyone within the earshot. Dick Sadler, Archie Moore's trainer, who had worked with Cassius for a short time in San Diego, and had told Angelo if he trained the kid, he deserved a Purple Heart with 7 clusters. It did not take Johnny long to understand the cryptic warning. From the train station, Angelo drove to Colored Town, where he had arranged for Clay to share a room at the Charles Hotel with a Jamaican heavyweight. Dundee thought there were 2 beds in the room, but there was only a double bed for 2 heavyweight boxers. Furthermore, since Angelo received a discount on the room, the management recouped some of its losses by installing an air conditioner. The Spartan low-rent condition of the room was matched by the neighborhood Freddie Pacheco, who would soon become Clay's fight doctor, and had a medical practice close to the Charles Hotel called the area hellhole of pimps, hookers, drug dealers, winos, and general bad guys. So it was a no man's land that slept till late in the morning, took a siesta in the afternoon, then came alive with an adrenaline rush at night. Its after midnight scene offered 1,000 temptations. Marijuana from the islands that could knock a smoker on his blank, heroin so pure that it was lights out with one shot, long-legged sisters wearing short, gloved, tight dresses, and any sort of alcohol, sex, or adventure that could be dreamt of. This was a place that would test the dedication of any innocent, handsome young man. But Cassius struggled to get to sleep that first night. He later complained that the worst times of training in Miami were lonely hours after dark. "I just sit here like a little animal in a box light at night," he told Sports Writing 61. "I can't go out in the street and mix with the folks out there because they would be out there if they was up to any good. I can't do nothing except sit. Here I am, just 19, surrounded by showgirls, whiskey, and sissies, nobody watching me. All this temptation, and me trying to train to be a boxer is something to think about." The next morning, Clay made his way to the Fifth Street Gym, where Dundee trained his fighters. In the glory days of prize fighting, 4 training gymnasiums stood above all the others: Leeson's and Stillman's in New York, the Main Street Gym in Los Angeles, and the Fifth Street Gym in Miami. Located in South Beach at the corner of Fifth Street and Washington Avenue, it was in a neighborhood where nothing good was happening. The money, increasingly in development, were flowing into North Beach, leaving whole sections of South Beach for the derelicts and the druggies. The dilapidated second-story facility featured rotten floors, cracked mirrors, accumulated grime, and a stench of sweat, jock straps, and cigarette and cigar smoke. In addition to its foul smell and crusted dirt, the gym suffered from other maladies: clogged drains in the showers, holes in the plasterboard walls. Chipping paint lent a certain grungy charm to the place, but an infestation of hungry termites threatened the entire structure. They attacked floors, walls, wings, rings, and even chairs and desks. Possibly they were angered or encouraged by the heat, out sweltering under its tin roof. Fighters trained in the gym soon realized that the place had no air conditioning. Large floor-to-ceiling windows added to everyone's discomfort, so many of the best fighters who trained there were from Cuba and accustomed to such temperatures. But boxers from the north considered the conditions inside the gym inhumane, if not entirely illegal. But to Angelo Dundee, the place was my little slice of heaven. For the fighters, the gym offered not so much a slice of heaven as the chance for salvation, but with the windows open, the hot and stale air from the inside mixed with the humid blast from the outside, the noise of streets harmonized with the sounds of the gym, men skipping ropes, punching heavy bags in each other, and yelling encouragements in good-natured barbs in English and Spanish. But in the Fifth Street gym, white, brown, and black men met in complete equality, fleeing from poverty and even persecution in the pursuit of a dream. Some of the finest boxers of the early 60s trained alongside Clay under Angelo's guidance. In 1961, the revolutionary government of Fidel Castro outlawed professional boxing in Cuba, sending dozens of skillful Cuban boxers into exile in the United States, especially Miami, where they added to Dundee's pool of talent. Willie Pastrana won the light heavyweight championship in 1963, the same year that Ralph Dupas captured the junior middleweight title. Otemio, Sugar Ramos, the featherweight crown, Luis Rodriguez, the welterweight belt. Every week, it seemed Angelo and one of his contenders headed to some world capital for an important match. It was a heady time. The talk of big money title fights, the smell of success cutting through the malodorous, low-rent atmosphere of the Fifth Street gym. But at the center of the action was young Cassius, just beginning his professional career and fighting in small money preliminary matches, but with an ego and energy that filled the gym. Observing the action inside the facility was sports writer Myron Cope, who wrote, Cassius reigns over the gym's white, Negro, and Cuban fighters like the leader of a street gang who has established his authority merely by talking his subjects into submission. He jabbers away at the Cubans in homemade, simulated Spanish, and then they throw up their hands and walk away shouting, Nino, Cambaca, Grande. The baby has a big mouth. There was no resentment in the comment, just a statement of fact. In Cassius Clay's trainer and fighter were ideally matched. Dundee saw immediately that by the standards of Cassius boxing, Clay was a deeply flawed fighter. He kept his hands too low. He avoided often punches by moving straight back and was a dyed-in-the-wool headed hunter. He did not even faintly resemble Joe Louis or Sonny Liston, hard punching heavyweights with wonderful balance and great left jabs and knockout power in both hands. But for all his deficiencies, Cassius had assets. Most obviously, he had extraordinary hand and foot speed. When he arrived in Miami, he was a small heavyweight, weighing only 182 pounds, but his quickness was more than just the result of his size. Probably no heavyweight had ever been as fast as Clay. Certainly none in the early 1960s, when most, with the exception of Floyd Patterson, tended to be orthodox plotters. Less readily apparent, Clay's sense of distance was nearly perfect. This ability is crucial in boxing. Throw a punch from too far away, and it falls short of its target. Throw it too close, it loses its full leverage. In addition, a fighter who moves too close to an opponent is easier to tie up. Clay's speed allowed him to dart in and out. His sense of distance permitted him to throw a punch at the ideal moment, when it could reach its target. With maximum force, almost no fighter could snap out a jab as quickly or accurately as Clay, and none could deliver a faster right-hand lead. Furthermore, his quickness and sense of distance allowed him to dodge his opponent's punches sometimes by mere inches. Many trainers will have winced at Clay's glaring flaws and attempted to teach him proper technique. Dundee, however, focused on Cash's magnificent assets. To be sure, he tried to refine Clay's unorthodox style. Smoothing his herky-jerky movements, he worked on his balance, convincing him to throw more flat-footed power punches and advised him to get his weight behind his blows. But crucially, Angelo did not seek to fundamentally change Cash's style. He believed that every fighter was unique and should be treated that way. That's not too alike, he noted. You don't say, this guy fights like this guy. They don't. They all individuals. They all got their own individual secrecies, got their own rhythm. Much as Cassius may have imagined himself as another Sugar Ray Robinson, Dundee's primary job was to train Cassius Clay to box like Cassius Clay. After listening to Clay talk and watching him spar, Dundee told his fighter, you, my friend, are neither Sugar Ray Robinson nor Archie Moore, and you've got a long way to go before you even resemble them. Who you are is Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. And that's the man I'm going to teach you to fight like. A guy's never going to get anywhere thinking he's somebody else. Angelo quickly realized that for all his bluster, Cassius was a dedicated athlete. He came to the gym on time, trained tirelessly, and learned quickly as long as the lessons were packaged correctly. Dundee seldom told Clay what to do. Rather, he made Cassius feel like he was the source of every improvement. I didn't train him. Cat Dundee recalled, I advised him he'd be in the gym and I'd say, you're really putting up your left hand into that jab. You're really snapping it. Then when I see him doing something right again, I say, oh my God, I've never seen a heavyweight throw a left uppercut so perfectly. Oh boy. Then he'd throw it again and again. Confronted with Clay's ego, Dundee discarded his own, becoming the ideal second banana. If Cassius said, I'm going to run 5 miles, Angelo responded, that's good for your legs. If Clay changed his mind and said, no, I'm going to rest, Dundee instantly added, good, you need your rest. This way the fighter was in charge even when he was not really in charge. One critical aspect of the pace of Clay's career, Dundee had the final word. Clay repeatedly told reporters that he wanted to break Floyd past his record as the youngest heavyweight champion of all time, 21 years and 10 months, which meant that he had to capture the title by December 12, 1963. But that was Cassius Clay's obsession, not Angelo's, who was more concerned with advancing his fighter cautiously. He had seen too many fighters pressure into a mismatch. For the first few years at least, Dundee would only take sure bets contests for Clay, matches that he could win on his worst day. In the language of the fight game, Angelo arranged for Cassius to box opponents men who had virtually no hope of breaching contender status or one-time contenders on a steep slide down the rankings. Beginning in the last week of 1960, Cassius began to fight a string of setups. The fights were not fixed, but it would have taken a virtual act of God for him to lose. Herb Seiler was a drunk who had no boxing talent. Clay took him out in the fourth. Anthony Big Tony Asperti had just gotten out of the can on an unlawful entry conviction and was in no condition to fight. Cassius ended the match in the third. Sweet Jimmy Robinson had a razor cut on his cheek and no business in a rise ring. The referee stopped the fight halfway through the first. In just over a month in Miami, Cassius Clay had improved his record to 4-0. Still, matches against setups were a little help when it came to persuading boxing fans to accept Clay's claim that he was a great fighter. For now, what happened in a sparring match was more important. In February of 1961, the handsome Swedish heavyweight and former world champion Ingemar Johansson came to Miami to train for his upcoming title fight with Floyd Patterson. Leading sparring partners Johansson Camp told promotional coordinator Harold Conrad to hire a few. Conrad went to the Fifth Street gym, asked Dundee for recommendations. Calling Clay over, Dundee said, hey, Cash, you want to work with Johansson? The question was a switch, lighting up Clay. I'll be dancing with Johansson, he said, repeating, I'll go dancing with Johansson. Conrad just looked at Angelo. He ain't seen nothing yet with this crazy bastard, Conrad recalled Dundee saying. And he hadn't. Johansson had a great right hand, but 2 left feet. Conrad said, once the former champion and the preliminary fighter were in the ring together and fight in front of sports writers and 2,000 spectators, Cassius literally danced circles around Ingemar, hitting him with light jabs as if he were fighting a rematch with Big Tony. Cassius Clay, 19, advanced on Ingemar Johansson, wrote the Miami Herald's John Underwood. Whack! His jab bounced off the Swede's headpiece. Whack, whack! 2 more jabs. Clay danced lightly, shifted feet, led with the right. Zing! Whack, whack! The combinations explored and celebrated Johansson's profile, above and around the dimpled chin. And so, continued. Johansson, a myth, lumbering bear, chasing the bee who had stung him. Talking of while he moved, Clay exhorted. I'm the one who should be fighting Patterson, not you. Come on, here I am. Come and get me, sucker. Come on, what's the matter? Can't hit me. It was like Jack Johnson fighting Tommy Burns. Like Clay was the champion, Johansson was the trail horse. Johansson was furious, kind of like a call. I mean, he was pissed. He chased Clay around the ring, throwing amateurish punches, missing by feet, and looking at last looked ridiculous. After 2 rounds, he was exhausted and the session was stopped. He made a monkey out of Johansson, remember Sports Illustrated writer Gil Rogan. When he returned to New York, he told the editors at the magazine, this guy's going to be heavyweight champion someday. You have to write about him. For Rogan, Underwood, and other sports writers, this was Clay's true Olympian moment. They recognized the emergence of a star. The Johansson session showed Dundee that it was time to match him against more experienced boxers. So Clay stopped Donnie Freeman, a good club fighter, in the 7th round. Then he fought Lamar Clark, who possessed a gaudy 46-2 record that included a streak of 44 straight knockouts. Against Clay, however, the heavyweight punching Clark was outmatched. Clay took him out in the 2nd round. Marv Jensen, Clay's manager, was impressed. This guy isn't very many fights away from a championship as far as I'm concerned, Jensen said. He has the fastest hands of any heavyweight I've seen any place, including Patterson. Black sports writers were even more generous, evoking the near sacred L word. A Pittsburgh Courier scribe compared Clay favorably with the legendary Joe Louis. And for the first time in his professional career, New York Times featured writer Off the Daily devoted exports of the Times columns to Clay, describing him as a compulsive talker, the engaging personality of a youthful Archie Moore. Daly wrote, this good-looking boy is a charmer, and it's so natural that even his more extravagant statements sound like exuberance instead of braggadocio. On him, they look good. With comparisons to Lewis and notes in the New York Times, Clay's career was bounding forward ahead of schedule. After a month's vacation in Louisville and road trips to visit Wilma Rudolph and other friends from the Olympics in the late spring of 1961, he once again boarded the South Wind from Miami, but Dundee waited to resume his education. That was found the fighter who viewed any gym as safe territory, an oasis away from the nation's racial problems, the traps and temptations that waited around every corner of the urban South. It's either get rich in 3 hours or get poor in 8, he liked to say. Train hard for 3 hours or 4 or 5, or get a manual day job for pennies an hour. He had chosen the path to wealth and applied himself totally, and the Louisville sponsoring group made sure that, unlike most other fighters, Cash did not have to get a job to make ends meet. Train and dream, dream and train. From busy days at the 5th Street Gym to lonely nights at the Charles Hotel, these formed the physical and emotional parameters of his life in Miami. Boxing, however, could not satisfy his spiritual life. There was no avoiding the world outside his hotel in the boxing arena. After all, Cassius was in the South, the land of Emmett Till's murder and his father's gruesome tales. Since he did not own a car, he jogged more than 5 miles from his hotel to the gym at the south end of Miami Beach. He ran in blue jeans and old military boots. As he crossed the Julia Tuttle Causeway with the Miami skyline in the distance and a cool breeze blowing across the bay, Clay shouted box. It was a strange sight to the white policeman, who thought that a black man running across the highway furiously punching the air might be crazy or a thief or both. In Miami, police frequently harassed blacks on the streets and raided black pool halls and bars. The officer stopped Clay to question him. Sweating and excited, Clay explained that he was running to Angelo Dundee's gym. The police then called Dundee to verify the story. The trainer explained that the kid was his boxer. That's Cassius Clay, he said. The episode offered an important lesson for Clay. White policemen didn't know his name and didn't care to know it. To them, he was just another Negro living across the tracks in the colored district of Overtown. After Clay returned to Miami from his visit home, Dundee upgraded him from the low-rent living quarters at the Charles Hotel to the Sir John Hotel on Little Broadway, a vibrant strip of nightclubs, theaters, diners, and shops. Some of the most famous black entertainers and athletes in America stayed at the Sir John Hotel, like in the Mary Elizabeth Hotel, like Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Nat King Cole, Sammy Davis Jr., Sugar Ray Robinson. These celebrities did not choose to stay at the Sir John or the Mary Elizabeth because their establishments offered the finest accommodations. They had little choice because blacks could not enter the best downtown hotels unless they waited tables, prepared meals, scoured toilets, or hauled white people's bags. Not even Joe Louis could check into the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. Since the early 20th century, real estate developers have promoted Miami as the Magic City. Beautiful beaches, luxurious resorts, Resorts and exotic entertainment attracted wealthy investors, tourists, and dreamers. But the city's black citizens were barred from the beaches, restaurants, golf courses, schools, and theaters of Miami's tropical paradise. In 1959, civil rights activists defied white supremacists, sponsoring dozens of sit-ins at department stores, drugstores, and diners. By August of 1960, just before Clay arrived, the persistence and shrewd backroom negotiations with white leaders had led to the complete segregation of the city's downtown. Yet Clay quickly learned that the city's culture of racism remained intact. In August 1961, Flip Shook, a white photographer from Sports Illustrated, visited Miami for a photo shoot with Clay. Shook was a serious photojournalist who had traveled the world and taken memorable photos that appeared in leading American publications, but he had never photographed a boxer. Shopping at Verding's department store, Clay picked up a short-sleeved shirt while Shook snapped pictures. When a white store clerk saw the tall, lean black man touching the shirts, he informed him that the store policy prohibited blacks from trying on clothing. Shook fumed. It shocked him that Cassius Clay, an Olympic champion, could not try on a shirt in an American store. But Clay was not surprised. He wasn't even angry. This was the South. And as a Southerner, he outwardly accepted second-class citizenship as a way of life. So come on, Flip. Don't worry about it. I don't want to make a big mess here. It's not a big deal. Clay may have been a boxer, but he was not a fighter. He disliked confrontations and avoided violence outside the ring. He preferred Overtown, where he felt safer among his own people. Throughout the neighborhood, blacks greeted him warmly and made him feel important. Soon enough, one man in particular, standing at the corner of Northwest 2nd Avenue and 6th Street in front of Muhammad's Temple of Islam, caught Cassius' attention. Sam Saxon, a burly 30-year-old light-skinned black man with the arms of a blacksmith, waved a copy of Muhammad Speaks, the Nation of Islam's newspaper. The two men started talking about the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. As he listened to Clay speak, he was clear to Saxon that he had already heard of the nation's leader, though he had never seen or met Elijah before. Hey, you're into the teaching, Saxon said. Well, I ain't been to the temple, but I know what you're talking about, Clay replied. Then the boxer introduced himself as he always did. I'm Cassius Clay. I'm going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world. Saxon, a boxing fan, recognized the name. I know you, man, he said. I followed you in the Olympics. The fact that Saxon knew his name engendered a level of trust from Clay. From a gambler and pool room hustler turned missionary, Saxon had become a devout Muslim. When he was not selling copies of Muhammad Speaks or teaching in the temple, he ran concessions at the Miami racetracks and worked as a bathroom attendant, handing towels to white men and shining their shoes. But his primary objective in life, his real love, was fishing for converts. Wherever they were, large concentrations of so-called Negroes, as the black Muslims called them, those lost souls in the kingdom of Allah, Elijah Muhammad's ministers cast their lines. On Sundays, young Muslim men, clean-shaven, hair close cropped, dressed in dark suits, waited outside churches, inviting Christians to hear the truth about God at the local temple. On weeknights, Muhammad's foot soldiers, armed with Muslim literature, canvassed the streets of the ghetto, fishing for the dead, those deaf, dumb, and blind, brainwashed of all self-respect and knowledge of kind by the white slave master. In nearly every large American city, Muslim officers trolled in bars, liquor stores, pool halls, barbershops, and diners. Standing on soapboxes and stepladders, Muhammad's articulate flow was preached and captivating the curious. In their meetings at Temple Number 29, a vacant storefront converted into a makeshift mosque, Saxon knows that Clay was curious about the Muslim faith. So in Miami, most blacks viewed the Muslims with skepticism, rarely entering the temple. When Clay first started attending meetings, there were only about 30 members. In his first visit, he heard a preacher named Brother John deliver a sermon on the history of the black man. Cassius learned that white slave owners stripped the black man of his identity, his heritage, his language, and his true name, and replaced it with a slave name, a name that belonged to the white man. According to the Muslims, the word Negro derived not from the Latin Niger, meaning black, but rather from the Greek Nekros, meaning corpse. Thus, the man who called himself a Negro remained spiritually dead, buried in the grave. Brother John's sermon helped Cassius make sense of his family's history, his own identity as a black man. He later recalled, I could reach out and touch what Brother John was saying. It wasn't like church teaching, where I had to have faith that what the preacher was preaching was right. And I said to myself, Cassius Marcellus Clay was a Kentucky white man who owned my granddaddy and named my great granddaddy after him. And then my granddaddy got named, then my daddy, and now it's me. For the first time in his life, Clay's name didn't sound so magical. And at that moment, when Cassius began questioning the origins of his name, Sam Saxon knew that he had hooked a big fish. Depending on the day of the week and the whim of the moment, Cassius claimed to have first learned about the Nation of Islam in Atlanta, Chicago, and New York in 1958, 1959, 1960. Over the years, whenever reporters asked him about his conversion to Islam, his answer was inconsistent. And in stories, Clay created an origin myth based on his scattered memories and infectious for tall tales. There were hardly any witnesses who could testify about his accounts, creating a sense of mystery about his activities with the nation and all of his anecdotes about meeting the Muslims. One thing remained constant. Whenever he left Louisville, he found freedom from supervision, he gravitated toward the temples. No one understood this better than Clay's own mother. The big mistake was when the Louisville sponsoring group sent him to train at Miami all by himself. She said, that's when the Muslims got him. That's how Sam Saxon got him and talked that Muslim stuff to him every day. Odessa was unaware that her son had started listening to the Muslims long before he had ever met Sam Saxon. As a teenager, when Cassius traveled for amateur boxing tournaments, he came across Muslim preachers proselytizing for the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. In October 1958, Clay and his father and me and his brother Rudy traveled to Atlanta for a vacation. At the time, the FBI had assigned Special Agent Robert R. Nichols to investigate the activities at Muhammad's Temple number 15 in Atlanta. Nichols set up wiretaps on the temple's phones and hired college students to record the minister's speeches. Nichols learned that Clay had talked with the Muslims outside the Atlanta temple on Piedmont Avenue. At the time, the information seemed unimportant. After all, Cash was just a 16-year-old kid from Louisville. Yet that day in Atlanta marked the beginning of his indoctrination. That was the moment he said, I was fished off for straight corner. When he traveled to Chicago for the Golden Gloves tournament in March 1959, he once again ran to the Muslims outside their temple. Near the nation's headquarters, the Muslims gave Clay a record that they said will explain everything he needed to know. When he returned to Louisville, he played the record repeatedly, reforming a white man's heaven is a black man's hell. Louis Eugene Walcott, a charming and talented calypso singer, crooned over piano and guitar. Walcott was then known as Louis X, who later became recognized as Louis Farrakhan. He became so popular singing the song at the nation's rallies that it became the anthem of the Muslim movement. Clay played the record over and over, memorizing the lyrics and absorbing the message. So in Miami, Sam Saxon and other members of the mosque echoed the song's central theme, reminding him that there was no heaven or hell after death. While the black man lived in hell, they said white Christians enjoyed heaven on earth. For a young man who dreamed of riches, Cadillacs, and mansions, the lyrics made him question his Baptist upbringing. As early as 1961, he begins talking about what he had learned from the Muslims, though he was careful to ensure that not even the sharpest reporter could recognize that he was sharing what the Muslims had taught him. When Clay started telling Sports Illustrated's Huston Horn what he thought about heaven and hell, the writer had no idea that the boxer's interpretation of the afterlife came directly from the black Muslims. Like last Sunday, he said, some cats I know said, Cassius, come on now, let's go to church, otherwise you won't get to heaven. Hold on a minute, I said to him, let me tell you something else. When I've got me a $100,000 house, another $250,000 stuck in the bank, the world title latched onto my name, then I'll be in heaven. Walking around making $25 a week with 4 children crying at home because they're hungry, that's my idea of hell. Clay already knew from experience that really talking about the Muslims could jeopardize his future. During his senior year of high school, he had written a paper about the nation for his English class. At night, he and his brother Rudy sometimes listened to Elijah Muhammad's national radio address. On the streets of Louisville, Cassius noticed black men dressed in dark suits, similar to the men he had seen in Atlanta and Chicago, selling copies of Muhammad Speaks. Yet when he wrote his paper, his teacher was so alarmed that she threatened to fail him. Though the principal ultimately overruled her, Clay continued his education about the nation in Miami. His most important teacher was Ishmael Shabakan. minister of the local temple. Nearly once a week, he visited with his spiritual mentor. At their meetings, he listened more than he taught. So Bakken taught him the basic tenets of the nation. An esoteric religious movement fabricated from black nationalism, Christianity, Islam, and cosmology. He explained that God was a black man, a real man on earth, and that the devil was a white man who also inhabited the earth. Blacks and whites must separate because there could be no peace between God and the devil. The Muslims' views about God and the devil, heaven and hell, help Cassius understand the cruel world his father had described. Has described. Clay Sr. had told him how whites had segregated, abused, and tortured his people, and the history lessons Cassius learned from the Muslims offered further proof of the white man's wicked ways. The devil, they said, had kidnapped, shackled, and enslaved ancestors. When the slaves arrived from Africa, whites forced them to abandon their native culture. Being black, the whites preached, was a curse. They convinced the slaves to hate everything that was black, including themselves. The devil imposed Christianity onto their slaves, manipulating them into worshiping the white man, the white man's God, a God having the same blonde hair, pale skin, and blue eyes as the slave master. It all makes sense to Cassius. Growing up, he never understood why everything associated with blackness was considered bad. When I was a little kid, I always knew something was wrong. He said everything was good. Everything good was supposed to be white. And I asked my mom, why is Santa Claus white? Why is Jesus white? He continued, Miss America was white. The good cowboy always rode on a white horse. Angel food cake is white. Devil's food cake is black. Even the president lived in the White House. Listening to Mom's radio addresses, Cassius heard something that he had never heard before. A message that he would begin repeating over the course of his career. Blacks were the strongest and most intelligent people in the world. The black man, Muhammad proclaimed, was the greatest. The black people in America have for many years have been made to feel that they were something of a divine curse. He preached, you must not think about that. Think that about yourself anymore. Be the black nation of the earth or the no one owners of it, the best of all human beings. You are the most powerful, the most beautiful, and the wisest. So the son of a poor sharecropper turned Baptist preacher, Elijah Poole, was born in 1897 in South Central Georgia. Raised on his father's fiery sermons, he became righteous with scripture, though he struggled to read the Bible after dropping out of school around the 4th grade. Laboring on farms on a sawmill and a bricklayer, he matured into a frustrated young man, disillusioned by meager wages, harsh employment, employers, and the humiliation of Jim Crow. Seeking relief from discrimination and poverty, in 1923, Elijah followed the Great Migration north, settling in Detroit with his wife Clara and dreaming of a better life. Failing to find work in Detroit's auto factories, he found himself living on the dole, drinking away his misery. A tiny light-skinned man with a pinched face and sad, almost shaped eyes. Elijah found salvation in 1931 when he heard Wise D. Farad deliver a lecture at an old lodging hall. A year earlier, Farad, an ex-convict turned door-to-door salesman, had founded the Nation of Islam. He claimed that he was a Muslim from the holy city of Mecca, Saudi Arabia, began using a variety of names: Wali, Farad, Professor Ford, Farad Muhammad, Wallace Farad Muhammad. He lectured on the history of the black man, biblical prophecy, and unorthodox doctrine of Islam. Preaching out of basements and rented halls, he emphasized self-help and racial pride. Gradually, with Poole became his most devoted apostle. He built a sect with a few thousand members. Farad rewarded Poole by appointing him supreme minister, bestowing upon him a new name, Elijah Muhammad. But in 1933, Farad vanished amid accusations that he had ordered a human sacrifice. Shortly afterward, Muhammad proclaimed Farad's deification as Allah incarnate. After Farad's disappearance, Muhammad anointed himself the Messiah, messenger of Allah, and continued to build a nation despite dissension and death threats against him from some members. Muhammad preached about the original man, Allah, black man who created the universe. The Muslims believed that the so-called Negro was a descendant of the original man, who belonged to the tribe of Sabas, an ancient group that founded the holy city of Mecca, and eventually migrated to Africa. According to Muhammad, the origins of the white man could be traced back to Yaqub, an evil big-head scientist. Nearly 6,600 years ago, Yaqub began preaching a dangerous version of Islam in the streets of Mecca. When authorities learned about his distortion of true Islam, he and his 59,999 followers were exiled to the island of Patmos in the Aegean Sea. The Yakub sought revenge for creating a devil race that would dominate the black nation through tricks, lies, and deception. Retaining the germs of the black man, Yakub produced pale-faced, blue-eyed men who were weaker morally and physically. He planned for these devils to rule the earth for more than 6,000 years. Testing the strength of the black nation, Muhammad prophesied that the white man's rule end in 1970 after the Battle of Armageddon. Destruction of the white man, the fleet foretold, will be carried out by the mothership, a wheel-shaped spacecraft a half-mile wide, piloted by the most intelligent black men. The mothership will carry 1,500 bombers. The plane could not be attacked, of course, because it could disappear behind the stars. In the days leading up to the resurrection, the mothership would litter the earth with pamphlets printed in English and Arabic, telling Allah's followers where to hide when the planes attacked. When the battle was over, the white man would be eliminated from the planet, and the black man would rise up from the smoldering ashes. In the 1960s, purported sightings of unidentified flying objects startled many Americans, but for followers of Muhammad, the presence of flying saucers pretended that the day of judgment was near. Cassius Clay began reciting Muhammad's lessons, leaving his friends at a loss as to what he was talking about. Freddie Pacheco recalled driving around in his vintage Cadillac convertible on a muggy Miami night with Clay and two women. Suddenly, Clay tapped the doctor on the shoulder and told him to pull over to the side of the road. He stood up and pointed toward the stars. "See that?" Cassius asked, his arm extended toward the sky. "It's the spaceship." "What spaceship is that?" one of the women asked. Clay stared at her, dumbfounded that she did not know about the spaceship. Then he launched into a lecture on nation theology. One day, about 6,000 years ago, a mad scientist named Dr. Yakub created the white race off the black. The mad doctor made the whites superior and pushed the blacks down into slavery. That period's coming to an end now. "What's that got to do with the spaceship?" the young woman asked. "Well, the spaceship took off with 26 yellow family living on it, circling the globe. They called it the Spit Mothership. The non-white races are being oppressed by the whites. And soon they will come down and wipe out the white race." "But they have been waiting for, child?" asked the older woman. Clay, ignorant, ignoring the question, rambled in a single, serious tone. "Once a year, they come down from the North Pole, put down a big plastic hose, and scoop up enough oxygen and ice to last them a year," he said. Then he's just pointing toward the sky, looking in awe, the mothership. For Cassius, the Muslims' tales about a big-headed scientist, mythical spaceships, and the coming of Armageddon were more than the stuff of fantasy. Muhammad's prophecy offered Clay a means of survival. A hostile country. Cassius' own belief in prophecy developed as a youth living in segregated Louisville. As school teacher explained, if you can't stand the world you live in and you can't change it, you got to believe in magic and predictions. That's Cassius when he was growing up. Living with that wild father and all that crazy talk around the house, you got to believe that things are going to change, so predictions have a great charm and appeal. Next year, the white man is going to lose his power. And 1966 will be a bad year for the white man. That's a great news to some people dumb enough to believe it. Believing in predictions is a way of warding off evil in the present when you can't ward it off any other way. You can bear living miserable if you accept a prediction that tomorrow will be better. That's why you get so much predicting and prophecy in the New York churches. That's why you get so much predicting prophecy from Cassius Clay too. For Clay, the black Muslims offered security, a sanctuary from the violent world that surrounded him, and he steadily gravitated toward the Miami temple as a result. His frequent visits excited Sukkhaban and Saxon, who alerted Jeremiah X, minister of the Atlanta Mosque and the chief organizer of the nation in the Deep South. Jeremiah visited Cassius in Miami, teaching him about the Muslim moral code. He explained that they prayed 5 times a day at sunrise, noon, mid-afternoon, sundown, before bed. That all Muslims prayed facing east toward Mecca. But before Clay prayed, he had to make the proper ablutions, rinsing his mouth, washing his hands, feet, and arms. Cleanliness inside and out, Jeremiah reminded him, was absolutely essential. Furthermore, Muslims were required to attend at least 2 temple meetings each week, though because of Clay's schedule and his celebrity, the minister made an exception. Clay learned that Elijah Muhammad instructed his followers to live a righteous life. prohibiting extramarital sex, gambling, dancing, attending movies, taking long vacations, lying, stealing, defying civil authority, and disobeying ministers. Muslims, he commanded, should refrain from consuming alcohol, tobacco, and drugs, and from overeating. An overweight Muslim could be fined until he lost the excess weight. An overweight Muslim could be fined until he lost the excess weight, and pork was strictly forbidden. The hog was a parasite, dirty, brutal, quarrelsome, greedy, ugly, foul, a scavenger which thrives on filth, just like the white man. In the process of educating Clay about the laws of the Nation of Islam, Jeremiah can cultivate a personal relationship with him, and later his brother Rudy, who was even more eager to join the nation. The more Cassius learned, the more he questioned. Jeremiah recognized that Clay's presence in the movement could create potential conflicts with the boxer and nation alike. Ransom understood that if the public learned about Clay's association with the nation, the boxer might be vilified. It could ruin his career, so Jeremiah sought the counsel of John Ali, the nation's national secretary, and advisor to Elijah Muhammad. When Jeremiah called Ali on the telephone and informed him that a fighter had attended their meetings, Ali roundly condemned the minister for being involved with the boxer. Elijah Muhammad himself later told Jeremiah that he'd been sent to the South to make converts, not to fool around with fighters. Muhammad disapproved sports, especially boxing, which he maintained was just another avenue for exploitation of black youth by white, mostly Jewish men. He associated boxing with the evils of gambling, drunkenness, and crime. In his Muhammad Speaks column, he argued that sports encouraged blacks to throw away their money on the white man's games of chance. The only reason that the white man allowed blacks to participate in their sports, he claimed, was to distract them from their real problems. Sports was just another tool to keep the black man down. Yet perhaps Clay's pursuit of a righteous life was not as incompatible with boxing as Muhammad believed. In many ways, the ritual regimen of the nation's strict code of behavior mirrored the boxing's Spartan training. The Muslim ministers dictated when Clay prayed, when he ate, and how he spent his leisure time. Similarly, Angelo Dundee created his training routine. He told him when to rise in the morning, when to run, when to eat, when to spar, when to go to bed. Clay's spiritual mentors and boxing instructors required hard work and sobriety and proper nutrition. Both worlds, boxing and the Nation of Islam, demanded physical fitness and purity that rewarded resistance to temptations. In Miami, Clay chose to occupy both worlds. There were two places where he felt most comfortable, two sanctuaries that provided shelter from outsiders and antagonistic white men. Muhammad's Temple, number 29, the Fifth Street Gym. One hardened his body, the other nurtured his soul. Yet he had no idea what would happen when those two worlds collided. Right, chapter 2. And I have no name. It's a name some white man gave one of my ancestors a long time ago. Rather be called blank, Malcolm X. On a cold April evening in 1957, a fight broke out between two black men at the corner of 125th Street and Lynx Avenue in Manhattan, the heart of Harlem. Swiftly, police cars arrived at the scene, sirens wailing, and officers jumped out of their vehicles. White patrolmen broke through the crowd, gripping their nightsticks, demanding the onlookers disperse. The policeman dumped a suspect. The crowd watched in horror. Why don't you carry the man to jail? Johnson Hinton asked. In Harlem, patrolmen routinely subjected black men to random searches and brutal force. Officers ignored Hinton's protest, ordering him to move on, but he just wouldn't listen. Roaring bolder and louder, he shouted, "You're not in Alabama. This is New York." Enraged, officer like Mike Dolan knocked into the ground. The officer unleashed his baton, crackling Hinton in the skull until blood gushed onto the sidewalk. While the police stuffed his limp body into the squad car, black and brown faces looked on in disgust, complaining in hushed tones. It seemed that there was nothing that they could say, nothing they could do. The one black man who had challenged the police found himself behind bars, silenced by a bloody baton. But in Harlem, the black man's anger toward the white man had long simmered. Everywhere he turned, the white man embarrassed, exploited, and emasculated him. The white man arrested him. The white man raised the rent. The white man got the job. The white man cut his wages. The white man denied his loan application. The white man had better schools, nicer homes, and more money. To live in Harlem, Ralph Ellison once wrote in 1948, is to dwell in the very bowels of the city. It is to pass a labyrinthine existence among streets that explode monotonously, skyward with their spires, and crosses of churches and cluttered underfoot with garbage and decay. Black families lived in crowded tenements, crumbling buildings infested by vermin and cockroaches, in the shadows of dark alleys and uncrowded street corners. Men sought relief, drinking, smoking, and gambling away the little money that they had. Poverty and addiction and violence plagued black neighborhoods, overcrowded and exploited politically and economically. Harlem is the scene and symbol of the Negro's perpetual alienation in the land of his birth. As the squad cars pulled away from the scene, a woman who witnessed the assault rushed to the Nation Islam's Sabas restaurant at 113 Snakes Avenue. She told the men that one of the Muslim brothers, Johnson X, as he was known, had been severely beaten by the police. Joseph X, immediately the rugged captain of the local Temple's Fruit of Islam, the nation's secret army, organized more than 50 men using a phone chain. Every temple had a security unit made up of an elite group of men who were held to a higher standard of discipline than other members. Trained soldiers, the FOI, was responsible for enforcing the laws of the nation, protecting Elijah Muhammad's followers. They defended the temples and regularly drilled in paramilitary tactics, boxing and judo, though they were forbidden for carrying arms. So when the Muslims arrived at the 28th precinct on 123rd Street, the police feared that they were hiding guns under their heavy coats. The temple's minister, a lean, copper-skinned man with a long face and square jaw, wearing thick black horn-rimmed glasses, walked right into the station, standing nearly 6 feet 3 inches tall and sporting a camel hair coat. Malcolm X spoke forcefully but calmly, requesting to see Hinton. The police denied that any Muslims were held inside the jail, but as an angry throng of nearly 2,000 black people gathered in front of the station, they allowed the minister to check on him. Lying on the cold cement floor of the jail. Hinton could hardly speak. An officer had struck him across the jaw and his baton when he began praying inside his cell. Continuing his rage, Malcolm demanded that the lieutenant in charge take the concussed prisoner, who was actually suffering from subdural hemorrhaging, to the hospital. Fearing a riot outside the station, the police called for an ambulance. When the minister walked out of the precinct, he directed the brethren to follow him to the hospital. Outside of his congregation, a few people in the crowd knew much about Malcolm. They had never seen him lead a march or picket a boycott. The Muslims reject the American democratic system, refusing overt political action. They didn't even vote. Instead, the nation occupied an isolated world of complete separation. Elijah Muhammad taught his followers to respect civil authority, avoid confrontations, be polite, courteous. Respect is that you may inspire respect from the police officers. He preached, if you are attacked and peaceful, God comes to our rescue. If you are aggressive, you might fight your own battle without Allah's help. Yet, nonviolence had its limits, and it's not acknowledged. If attacked, the Holy Quran says fight back. Without wanting police violence against blacks, Harlem itched to fight back. In Harlem, most black men never dared to question a white man in uniform. So when Malcolm strode into the 20th precinct, challenging white authorities, he inspired Black Harlem. For there, he marched at the front of a solid line of nearly 100 Muslims and some pathetic onlookers who had gathered at the precinct, leading them to the hospital. As Muslims advanced down Lenox Avenue, Harlem's busiest thoroughfare, more than 2,000 blacks clustered closely behind him. Shortly after they arrived at the hospital, the doctors treated Hinton, but then inexplicably released him and he was taken back to jail. Surging back toward the police headquarters in a fury, within an hour, 4,000 people stood in a solidarity with the nation outside the 28th precinct, standing in rank formation. God's angry men stared straight ahead, arms crossed, waiting for the minister's orders. Inside the station, Malcolm negotiated with the police, securing the release of 2 other Muslims who were arrested with Hinton. But the commanding officer refused to send the injured prisoner back to the hospital because he had to be incarcerated. overnight to appear in court the next day. But 2:30 a.m. At 2:30 a.m., Malcolm sensed a stalemate, an opportunity to demonstrate his authority. The police pleaded with him to break up the crowd, promising that Hinton would continue to receive medical care. Fearing a violent confrontation between the police and his followers, he walked outside, turned toward one of his lieutenants, and whispered in his ear. Then he raised his fist, signaling for the Muslims to disperse. Without a word, the minister's troops drifted into this darkness, as did the other blacks who had gathered in the street. The police had never witnessed a man control a crowd the way that Malcolm X did that night. And stunned by the scene, an officer looked at James Hicks, a reporter for the Amsterdam News, said no one man should have that much power. In the aftermath of the nation's protests against police brutality, Malcolm X became a Harlem folk hero. For the first time, the black man, woman, and child in the streets were discussing those Muslims, he later recalled. The New York City Police Department instantly became interested in those Muslims too, urgently seeking more information about Mr. X. Undercover agents in the NYPD's surveillance program, the Bureau of Special Services, sat in parked cars monitoring the activities of the Harlem Temple. Malcolm's increasingly visibility in New York concerned the FBI too, and about a year after Bureau of Special Services began surveillance, the FBI designated him a key figure. For the rest of his life, government agents would track his movements, document his speeches, and record his telephone calls. Malcolm could hardly smile, frown, or smell a fire without FBI knowing about it. Public curiosity led increasing numbers of blacks to visit Malcolm's temple. For the Johnson-Hinton episode, the New York temple had only a few hundred members. After several thousands became followers of Elijah Muhammad at Temple Number 7. Benjamin Goodman was such a visitor, a tall young man with an angular face. Goodman was raised in the Christian churches of Virginia. After moving to New York, he bounced between unfulfilling jobs until he found a position in the shipping department of Vanguard Records. One of his friends at work insists that he visit the temple at the corner of 116th Street and Lenox Avenue to hear the minister. Inside the paper-littered doorway of the storefront temple, a red hand-painted sign greeted visitors. Welcome to Muhammad's Temple Number 7. Every Wednesday and Friday at 8 p.m., 8 o'clock p.m., Sunday at 2 p.m., elevator service, 4th floor. When Goodman arrived for his first meeting, two sharply dressed men acknowledged him. Welcome, brother. Climbing 3 flights of creaking, rotting stairs, he could hear the echo of black men's voices. When he reached the 4th floor, which was much cleaner than the others, two large men directed him into the men's room, where 4 other men stood bolt upright, eyes forward, lips closed. A stocky man in a dark suit, standing only a foot away from him, leaned in close enough to smell his breath, and finally asked, "Do you have any weapons, alcohol, cigarettes, or drugs in your possession?" Had he answered affirmatively or sweet of liquor, he would have been asked to leave. After Goodman emptied his pockets, the security guard fished him thoroughly. When the inspection was over, the guard thanked him for his cooperation and informed him that he could enter the auditorium. Goodman walked inside the lecture hall and sat on a metal folding chair on the men's side of the aisle, across from women dressed in white floor-length gowns and wearing head coverings. While he waited for the meeting to begin, he studied the blackboard, which was divided into 2 sides, one representing Christians, other representing Muslims. On the left side, he saw an American flag framed by a cross and silhouette of a black man hanging from a tree. In the corners of the flag, painted in bold letters, were the words Christianity, slavery, suffering, and death. On the opposite side, the corners of a red Muslim flag inside it include the words Islam, freedom, justice, and equality. Beneath both flags, the congregation read the central question of the nation: who will survive the war of Armageddon? As Goodman pondered the question, an assistant minister named Brother Henry walked to the front of the room and welcomed the congregation in Arabic, "Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you." The visitors replied in unison, "Wa alaikum salam, peace also be unto you." So that's what was going on. I've been on here for almost like 2 hours. This is a great, interesting chapter. This is dealing with Malcolm X, all the lectures that he was doing, the power that he had. And it's talking about in this chapter about how he lectured about the history of slavery, the Negro ministers who preached the white man's religion, the Bible, the book of poison, the evil of consuming pork. He's talking about that, stuff like that. So, it's talking about the tenets of the Nation of Islam movement, about how you could not take dope, tobacco, use alcohol, profanity, any vice of all kinds. You must stay away. Stay away from that and keep it moving with that. So a true leader had to receive a new life, a new identity, a new name. So that's what it was all about. And you had to remove the slave name and add X to it as a surname, their slave name. So you had no Joseph X, for example, Benjamin X. So the X was a temporary replacement until the messenger gave the follower an Arabic name, their original name, such as Ali, Muhammad, Sharif, or Shabazz, stuff like that. So Benjamin 2X became one of Malcolm's assistant ministers in 2 years. So Malcolm would quiz his assistants on religion, history, geography, politics, philosophy, economics, and current events. Every class he required that each student bring a notebook, dictionary, thesaurus, and library card, stuff like that. So Benjamin and the other ministers were not working. When they weren't working on their day jobs, they would study the Bible and the Quran. They read the New York Times, the London Times, variety news magazines. They prepared for debates, wasted time on television, movies, and parties, and sports was unacceptable. Once his assistants convinced Malcolm that they were ready to do God's work, he took them out fishing on the streets of New York. So standing on congested street corners and step ladders outside churches and drugstores, Malcolm courted lost souls, inviting them to hear the truth at Temple Number 7. Armed with the Bible and handbills, he worked the streets talking to men who reminded him of a younger version of himself, hustlers, gamblers, and bottom feeders. Men searched for a way out of the ghetto. He understood these men, their frustration, their anger, their language. He spoke directly, never wasting a word, appealing to their experiences that he had lived. Anyone who listened to Malcolm was invariably transfixed by stories of his own reinvention. Path that Malcolm to the Nation of Islam was a torturous one, bouncing around predominantly at white reform schools and foster homes. Malcolm, 3 months shy of his 16th birthday, only had an 8th grade education. He boarded a Greyhound bus in Lansing, traveled to Boston. So this chapter is talking about the makeup, the beginnings of Malcolm X. First he's Malcolm Little and just going through his journey, on the streets of Boston, becoming Detroit Red and Harlem as well. That's where he settled at, stuff like that. Wearing suits, going on burglary sprees and stuff like that, messing with white women and stuff like that. Going to prison, stuff like that. So he bragged about a lot of things, his exploits, reefer, tobacco, liquor, and he had a nickname named Satan by a prisoner. He was an abstinent prisoner, and about atheist nicknamed Satan for his behavior. So it's just a lot of stuff that he went through to be where he will become later on. It's like Cassius. So this book, talks about Muhammad Ali's journey growing up in Louisville as a young man. Malcolm X, same thing. Being a hustler before he became, Malcolm X. He was Malcolm Little, obviously. So he had to go through that conversion struggle, learning what to be as a black man. So this chapter just simply talks about that. So it talks about in this chapter that on August 7th, 1952, about a month after the Massachusetts Department of Corrections transferred his parole to the state of Michigan, he walked out of the prison a new man, wearing a cheap suit, shedding the cloak of Big Red. So he met a guy, let me see. Reginald. He received a letter also from his brother Filbert about the Nation of Islam. So Reginald, his younger brother, visited him. He told him that there was a man who knew everything. Who was that? Malcolm asked, God is a man. He answered, his real name is Allah. He said, Reginald explained that Allah had come to America and taught everything he knew to his disciple Elijah, black men just like us. Stuff like that. The little seed was planted for him to move forward. To not smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, do drugs, or eat pork. So he was an assistant minister for Detroit Temple, proved himself an effective organizer. So Muhammad ordered his protege in Malcolm X with his own ministry in Boston. So that's where he established Temple Number 11. So Muhammad sent him to Philadelphia to further build the movement's membership along the East Coast. Muhammad promoted in just 3 months. His charismatic disciple once again named him minister of Temple Number 7 in New York. So Malcolm persuaded many blacks to hear him preach at the temple, but not everyone was easily convinced that Islam was the path to righteousness. When people heard him talk about the nation's theology, many just shook their heads in disbelief. One man yelled, "You blank or crazy," and marched right past him. On another occasion, when Malcolm tried to convince some Baptists into converting to Islam, the man asked, "What are the rules of your organization?" Malcolm replied, "Well, my brother, you will have to stop drinking, stop swearing, stop gambling, stop using dope, stop cheating on your wife." The man thought for a moment. Hell, he quit. "I think I better remain a Christian." It's interesting for him to say that at the time, because Christians are not supposed to gamble either. Christians are not supposed to be cussing or commit adultery or swear or drink or get drunk. So this guy was just totally out of touch to say that he was wanting to remain a Christian. I mean, Christians are also not supposed to be gambling. They're not supposed to be gambling, cussing, doing drugs, cheating on their wife if they're married, or swearing or drinking. But anyway, as I move on, that's the thing, interesting quote for him to say something like that. Because Christians are supposed to have the same values as the Muslims, as far as not doing those certain things. As far as gambling, not supposed to gamble, not supposed to do dope or cheat on your wife if you're married. So let's keep it moving. In the mid-1950s, during the nation's ascendance in the impoverished black neighborhoods of northern cities, Malcolm X was fast becoming the most important symbol of the movement. The New York minister served as living proof that through the messenger, anything was possible. So if Muhammad's message could cleanse a depraved, atheist, criminal, and transform him into a minister of God, a man who respected himself and his people, then Muhammad could save the most immoral. As Muhammad's most prized minister and one of his closest confidants, the minister's presence was felt everywhere. In Atlanta, Atlantic City, Buffalo, Jersey City, Newark, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C. In the 7 years after he left prison, the number of temples increased from 10 to 30. "I thank Allah for my brother Minister Malcolm," Muhammad proudly declared. They became like father and son. Some of the messenger's aides believed that he cared more for Malcolm than for his own children. Some of the stuff that's in this chapter. Yet Muhammad was not the only one closely following Malcolm's growing influence within the nation. In late 1958, black FBI informant assessed the New York minister's rising power. Brother Malcolm ranks him about third in influence. Behind Muhammad and his son-in-law, supreme captain of the fruit, Raymond Sharif, outside of the messenger's immediate family, he is the most trusted follower. He is an excellent speaker, forceful and convincing. He's an expert, organizing, and untiring worker. So Malcolm has a strong hatred for blue-eyed devils, but this hatred is not likely to erupt in violence, as he is much too clever, intelligent for that. Then there was an event, more than any other event, there was a documentary at the time called "The Hate That Hate Produced" that brought Malcolm into the country's national consciousness. As Louis Lomax, who was a journalist in New York, news anchor Mike Wallace, since the rising popularity of the Black Muslims movement in Harlem and surrounding controversy over their beliefs would spark great interest. So in the summer of 1959, Lomax gained Muhammad's cooperation through Malcolm and the sensationalized narrative Wallace told viewers that they were watching a story of black racism. The documentary portrayed the Muslims as the adversaries of the civil rights movement, the growing black supremacist group it declared taught their anti-white, anti-American doctrine in more than 50 cities, claiming more than 250,000 members, an exaggerated figure that only enhanced viewers' fears about the nation. In the documentary, Muhammad's heir apparent, the younger and more charismatic minister Malcolm X, overshadowed the nation's leader. Malcolm appeared on news broadcasts across the country overnight, almost overnight. The national media's reaction to the documentary convinced Muhammad that the press deliberately distorted his teachings as an effort to undermine him. Widespread attacks on the nation convinced Muhammad that Malcolm should respond directly to critics, despite accusations from some nation's officials who will blame the New York minister for seeking too much publicity. Yet Muhammad insists that Malcolm should become more visible. If Malcolm became famous, he explained, it would make me better known. Over the next year, Malcolm began traveling more, giving interviews on television and radio. He visited college campuses, delivered lectures, engaged in public debates. His life became a blur of planes and trains and speeches and sermons. His frequent appearances on television had shaped a public persona, so public perception that Malcolm was the Muslims, creating envy inside the nation's headquarters. Muhammad warned him, you will grow to be hated when you become well known, because usually people get jealous of public figures. Given his recent heart attack and chronic asthma, Muhammad could never have taken on the demands of traveling as Malcolm did. He had deteriorating health, led him to move to the dry climate of Phoenix, Arizona. So he had physical decline. In the spring of 1960, in the winter of 1960, thousands of college students in dozens of cities settled on a new tactic for forcing change to the civil rights landscape, the sit-in. The nonviolent direct action movement was aimed at desegregating lunch counters in the South. Yet the sit-in was of little use in the North, where black people could eat at any coffee shop or lunch counter. The blurred color line of de facto segregation, hardened by history and custom, created separate and unequal neighborhoods, poor public schools, dilapidated housing projects, persistent unemployment. Trapped in a cycle of poverty, blacks live as second-class citizens, fatigued by empty promises of a better life. The mood of the Negro, particularly in New York City, Louis Lomax asserted, is very, very bitter. He's losing faith. The Negro on the streets of Harlem is tired of platitudes from white liberals. On a mild Saturday afternoon in May 1960, about 3 months before Cassius Clay made his departed New York for the Rome Olympics. An estimated 10,000 Harlemites standing shoulder to shoulder attended an outdoor freedom rally at the intersection of West 125th Street and 7th Avenue. The large assembly of people, most of whom were not Muslims, attested to Malcolm's growing popularity as a political figure. Responding to the urban unrest, he offered a broad message of solidarity. As black people, we must unite. He exhorted the masses to follow fearless black leaders who will stand up, help the so-called American Negro get complete, immediate freedom. While civil rights activists challenged segregation in the South, a temper of defiance swept through northern cities like an epidemic. Radicals tried to cure the disease by pressing for full citizenship, equal rights, and racial justice. Well before black power became a rallying cry, the belief in self-determination, racial pride blossomed as northern black activists fought for better jobs, quality education, open housing. No one articulated black rage against American hypocrisy and the failures of democracy more strongly than Malcolm did. Despite his calls for unity, he could hardly resist criticizing civil rights leaders who advocated integration. Many admired Malcolm for his fearlessness. He was willing to debate anyone, anytime, anywhere. Malcolm debated the way Clay fought, swinging from the opening bell, hitting his opponents with hard cuts and fierce jabs, unrestrained by the conventional niceties of debate. He played by his own rules on his terms and cultivated a combative style, bobbing and weaving, pivoting the conversation in the direction that he wanted. Malcolm was not interested in simply scoring points and landing a few punches. Decision was not his goal. He swung for the knockout. As Head recalled, he would turn a radio or television program to his advantage in a way he credited to the boxing ring's great Sugar Ray Robinson. He would dramatize a round's last 30 seconds. Similarly, Malcolm would eye the big studio clock, and at the instant he showed 30 seconds to go, he bounced in and closed the show with his own verbal barrage. Photographers popularized a fiery image of him lecturing at the podium, fist clenched, face masked with a snarl. Yet Malcolm's behavior on the stage belied the provocative image of the angry black man. Dressed in a conservative suit with his tie perfectly knotted, he appeared more like an intellectual than an itinerant preacher. Before responding to a question, Malcolm looked back at the moderator or his opponent, holding their full attention. Then, after calculating his response, he thoughtfully answered, Joseph Dorso interviewed Malcolm, expecting more of a platform speaker, somebody who was very militant. He was more cerebral than physical. He reasoned. He was almost like a college professor. On occasions, multiple occasions, Malcolm matched wits with Bayard Rustin, civil rights activist, veteran activist of the civil rights movement, a close friend and advisor of Martin Luther King. In January of 1962, he debated at Manhattan Community College, a liberal congregation made up mostly of whites. So that's what took place. As Malcolm X's celebrity grew, as Malcolm's celebrity grew, he became empowered, speaking more independently about politics. The less time he spent inside Muslim Mosque number 7, the less he spoke about Muslim theology. Probably, Malcolm became convinced that the nation needed to engage in more action. As Muhammad read news clippings and transcripts of Malcolm's speeches and debates, he grew suspicious about his popular minister's motives. In Chicago, Muhammad's lieutenants whispered that brother Malcolm was trying to take over the nation. Muhammad suspected that Malcolm aspired to lead the Muslims into the front lines of protest, though he feared such involvement will only attract greater scrutiny from the government. On February 15, 1962, the messenger wrote Malcolm, reminding him not to go too much into details on the political side, nor into the subject of the separate state here for us. Less than a month after he received Muhammad's edict, Malcolm debated James Farmer at Cornell University. Speaking first, Farmer, leaders of the core that was Congress racial equality, borrowed the minister's standard speech about the white man's crimes against the blacks, explained that everyone already knew that racism poisoned America. That he aggressively criticized the nation's theology and separatist doctrine. The time has passed when we can look for pie in the sky, when we can depend upon someone else on high to solve the problem for us. What we want Mr. X, the representative of the black Muslims, and Elijah Muhammad to tell us today is what his program is, what he proposes to do about killing this disease. Right, so that's it for chapter number 2 through chapter 3. Now this was about Cassius Clay. This is about Muhammad Ali. So it deals with him. The morning definitely did not show Gorgeous George in his most gorgeous light. So this is where Muhammad Ali got his influence from. He says in my box, I really don't want anything to do with the civil rights program right now. That's what Cassius Clay said. Chapter 3 deals with who made me, it's me. So Gorgeous George is featured in this chapter because he was the most famous professional wrestler in America, was less than 1.5 years away from retirement, and 2 years and a half away from dying of a condition for his liver due to heavy drinking. But at Showtime, George could still muster enough energy to please the crowds. So that's where Clay got his style from. He met the West at the station. So that's where he got his swagger or confidence from. So the host then turned to George. In the early years of television, Gorgeous George practically invented the persona of the flamboyant, bombastic villain. After observing that the untalented freaks and baboons and foreigners who pass themselves off as professional wrestlers attracted the largest audience and purposes, he asked himself, what if a guy had a flair for showmanship and could also wrestle, would he go over? So George Wagner reinvented himself as Gorgeous George, a villain of the first order. He wore long dyed hair, gold-plated sequin, Georgie pins, satin outfits, poetry and ermine jockstrap, monogram towels, and the robes that looked like they had been listed from Liberace's closet, and switched down the aisle to the ring to the pomp and circumstance. So Gorgeous George was big influence on Muhammad Ali. He had that persona. He was the very negation of the American male athlete. The persona he originated was equal parts drag queen, aristocratic prig, low-down cheat, and audiences in rings across the country and the television could not seem to get enough of him. So that playbook that he had, Gorgeous George had, Cassius Clay adopted that. He adopted that into his persona. So when you watch the match that George had, knowing the versus grand entrance illuminated by a spotlight covered by a red velvet gown lined with white satin, he vowed that I've never been shy about talking. If I talked even more, there was no telling how much money people was pay to see me. So they told Dundee about George's performance, and this is a good idea. So that's how Ali became what he became. Before George departed Las Vegas, he talked briefly with Cassius Clay. Had gone to the wrestling match, watched the packed house, screaming insults at the floppish athlete. Met him with him afterward in the dressing room. So boxing wrestling is all a show, he told Clay. A lot of people will pay to see someone shut your mouth. So keep on bragging, keep on sassing, always be outrageous. So Clay got it. He understood that most beat writers were less interested in the truth than a good tale. Every day or so they need a story to foul. They spent their lives scrounging for copy, digging for leads, tracking down facts, conspiring for quotes. Trouble with boxing today, Cassius told a reporter after the Seven Dog match, is most boxers don't want to talk, say yay, no, yay, no. You rider men ain't got nothing to write about. You got Ring Magazine loaded with stuff about John L. Sullivan and all them old timers, nothing else to write about. So he knew the solution to the sport's woes. It was him. He expressed it with candid specificity. Boxing need fighters who talk a lot and kill. Fighter today, he bring 2 or 3 girls with him to the fight and go into the ring with his hair all waved silky. The olden days, a fighter go back in the woods and train and drink tea without sugar in it, getting mean. Today, temptations abroad in the land. There's more pretty cars these days, and you can get them cheap. Everything's $1 down. A liquor store on every corner. Rock and roll show in town every week. But Cash Clay go to bed at 9, meeting them lima beans, collard greens, okra, and tomatoes and spinach. Man, them are things that stick to your kidneys. Most guys eat crackers and soda pop, expect to stay in shape. But Cassius Clay, he a determined young man. When he lay down on a guy, that guy is supposed to go down. So as I see it today, I should be champ when I'm 21. You write that. So after his short exchange with Coach George, Cassius Clay became the most vocal and opinionated athlete in America. He sounded off on topics ranging from boxing, diets to music and foreign policy, though he rarely did address racial issues or domestic politics. The trouble is boxing is dying because everybody's so quiet. He meant it. He made it his personal mission to pump some noise into the sport. So he lectured on his personal growth. I'm mature, I'm growing a mustache I shaved yesterday for the first time. Some sports writers thought he was charming, refreshing. Others found him conceited and bombastic. And when Huston Horner of Sports Illustrated met Clay in 1961, he noted that the boxer was irrepressible, impish, cocksure, and sometimes utterly unbearable. But it mattered little how they felt about him because they all wrote about him. Cassius Clay became, for the early 1960s, what Joe Louis had been for the mid-1930s, a singular, transcendent force in the world of sports. In the Depression, sports writers had competed to pin a tag on Louis, coining such monikers as the Dark Destroyer, the Tony Tiger, the Chocolate Cobra, the Ebony Assassin, the Saffron Sandman, and of course the Brown Bomber, among scores of others. Virtually all refer to his skin color and destructive power. Clay's nicknames include the Louisville Loroper, the Mighty Mouth, the Mouth That Roared, the Marvelous Mouth, Claptrap Cash, Cash the Brash, and most famously the Louisville Lip. They suggested neither his race nor fighting ability, but alluded to the tenor and volume of his verbiage. In the age of celebrity, when fame was conferred on the loudest self-promoters, Cassius Clay was reaching for the moon. So that's what's all about in this chapter, about how Clay was ready to become Muhammad Ali, would go from being what he was. Before that, he wasn't talking trash and all that sort of stuff. But when he met Coach George and made that exchange with him, how George told him what to do, to brag and all this other stuff, that's how he adopted his persona. Got from Coach George. And that's how he became what he became. Saying self-promoting. Very verbal, very loquacious, braggadocious. So He took on, Gorgeous George, persona and adapted that into his own. So he was not going to be another Floyd passing, quiet, dignified, fearful, making a false step, or offending white America. He was not going to be Jackie Robinson. So he was definitely a different kind of athlete that America never seen before. He was very bold. That's what he was. He told Howard Tuckner in the New York Times once that I'm the boldest, the prettiest, the most superior, most scientific, the most skillfulest fighter in the ring today. So he was just, bragging. That was persona. So as I move through this chapter, that's basically what it's about. Also, there was a featured article in the Ring about Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, the born sport of boxing, claiming he looked like the Rookie of the Year. Right now, he has shown that he has the ability to handle the top grade men, but how he would do against the ranking fighters. So he was 10-0, 7 Indian knockouts or technical knockouts. So he's appeared on the page of Sports Illustrated and Life magazine. So he's doing a lot of things. So by 1962, in January, Cash had become more impatient, veering in a more independent direction. Increasingly, his rhetoric mixed humor with mean-spirited jabs at other heavyweights. He complained to reporters that he was frustrated by the slowness of his advancement up the heavyweight division. He said he tired of being fed on setups. I can get a title shot by knocking out a bunch of has-beens and novices, mostly fighters who are over the hill. Enzo accepted the fight because it would give Clay national television exposure. It would be staged at Madison Square Garden, so he will fight. End up fighting Detroit, Lucien, Sonny Banks. So the Garden was the summit for a boxer, as holy to the sport as Jerusalem and Mecca are to the faithful. So its landmark marquee jutted out between 49th and 50th streets on 8th Avenue like a square chin waiting to be punched. Stuff like that. So Cassius Clay was determined to restore the Garden and the sport to his glory days. Muhammad Ali, he was bound to do that. He wanted to do that. That's what Clay was about to do before he became Muhammad Ali. I've been on this live feed for 2 hours and 12 minutes and 41 seconds. So this is gotta be the longest live stream I've done. So keep moving. I'm gonna keep doing stuff like this. Not 2 hours, but I'd love to do 3 hours. But like I said, the more people get on this live feed, the better. Okay, so Ali beat Banks. That earned Clay to his first top 10 ranking. The National Boxing Association, Boxing Illustrated ranked him 10th, the ring 9th. So he still had not fought an active contender though, but he had climbed into that elite group. Some sports writers said that he belonged near the top, while others thought that he was a loudmouth fraud. So by 1962 in the spring, Cassius Clay had become one of the leading draws in boxing. He fought only has-beens and never has-beens, none ranked among the contenders without taking a substantial risk, and his reputation soared. Yep. In April 1962, one could still only glean kernels of that hidden self. Publicly emphasized his Christian virtues. I live by the Bible. He once told Los Angeles Times reporter Paul Zimmerman, my mother and father taught me to live right. No stealing, no cussing, no drinking, no smoking. The Bible says that he who reads the good book will understand to tell the truth. But other times he hinted that his religious beliefs were not exactly the ones he had learned in Louisville. Even when he was not in Miami, he pondered what he had learned at the mosque and his conversations with Sam Saxon, the black Muslim ministers. During several talks with reporters, he addressed the subject of pork. Once at dinner, during a long train ride, Clay witnessed sports writer Myron Cope cut into a roast pork loin. Cassius shuddered. Pork gives me a headache. Doctors tell me pork, 90% live cells, parasites. Pork, 90% maggots. You let that pork lay 2 days. It could get up and crawl. The hog is an unclean animal. Cat, rat, dog, hog. Add him up. It was the language not of his Baptist mother or his father, but of Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. Right, my time is up, so I'll be in chapter 4, 5, and 6 next time I get this book. I don't know when that's going to be. Maybe this on Thursday, maybe Friday, but I'll be in chapter 4. So I'm done with this the longest live feed I've ever done. I appreciate all who've tuned into this live feed tonight. It's been a great one reading about Blood Brothers, the fatal friendship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. I read the introduction and everything, read the first 3 chapters. I'll be in chapter 4, maybe 5 and 6 sometime this week. But look out to on Thursday. I won't do a live feed tomorrow, but I'll do a live feed on Thursday. Cause with the Word of God, I'll be in the book of Nehemiah, so I'll be in there real soon. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate those who tuned in. Looking forward to it. I'll be in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 6, chapter 5 and 7, and more on Thursday. So I won't do no live feed tomorrow. This is a great accomplishment right here, a milestone. It's got this, without question, the longest live feed I've done on my channel. Rashad Mitchell live feed. The longest live feed I've done is over 2 hours. 2 hours. I've done a live feed, so appreciate the support. Keep subscribing. Like I said, I'll be back on Thursday for another live feed and much more. The best is yet to come for this channel. Continue to support. Tell a friend, share, do what you can, subscribe. Until then, have a good night.